There we go. Okay, we'll try this again. I think we now have volume. So much for the mute button. It's just gone 10 o'clock, and welcome to my Sci-Fi Saturday. This is just an attempt to repeat last night because, once again, we've had quite a bit of stormy activity here in Northern Ireland, and we had intermittent power cuts left, right, and centre last night. And so we got going for about, I think we got going for about 30 or 40 minutes before we lost, well, I think we lost the live chat actually a bit earlier, and I just kept talking, and I decided to call it a day, and then we lost power again. So we only got about 40 minutes in the previous night, and I just thought I'd run this again as we do. If we're trying to do something like this and we can't quite make it, we'll always have another go. So tonight, just again to cover the topics for tonight's chat, we'll have a wee bit of a chat about the Pelipids in Dune now that we've finished the 3 videos on the Pelipid line. And also the topic for tonight, I thought, was based on looking at Denis Villeneuve's Dune and the other versions of Dune. Simply put, we're thinking about the fact that it's a really dumbed down version of the story. And in terms of what we're looking at, as I said the other night, it made me think of the Oscar Wilde. I think it's an Oscar Wilde quote where he said that criticism is intellect's revenge on art. And having thought about that a wee bit the previous night there, I've sort of come up with my own feelings that Denis Villeneuve's Dune is an example of art's revenge on intellect. And I don't know what you think about this. As I said, it's something. If anybody's got any comments or questions on this, fire away and I'll explain myself. And as usual, all topics on science fiction. So if there is anybody out there, if you've got any questions or comments, let us know. And I hope you can all hear me okay. And sorry about that earlier. We accidentally had the mute button on. So on the station at the minute, by the way, just to let you know that we're going to be helping to promote Cara Kennedy's new book on Dune. I think it's on the women of Dune. And if you bear with me a wee second, I'll get you the actual title. To go to my mail. And it's looking quite interesting. I've got a copy of the manuscript at the moment. And there we go. Let's have a wee nosy at that. Yes, and her book's called Women's Agency in the Dune Universe. And we've got, if you head over to, is it Humanitics? I'll get you some more details and I've posted something on the community section there. So it's going to, something hopefully on the 20th, I believe. I think about 9 o'clock GMT. And it's going to celebrate, it'll be basically a book launch. Just to read you the blurb, it's celebrating the publication of Dune scholar / Dr. Cara Kennedy's book, Women's Agency in the Dune Universe, tracing women's liberation through science fiction at this virtual launch event. So find out more about this over at dunescholar.com. And it says that she'll be joined in conversation with co-host me, Dr. Russ Sloan, from Doc Sloan's Science Fiction Station. So that's going to be... I think at the minute it's got down as the 21st of December. That's New Zealand time. It'll be the 20th of December here. But I'll get you some more details on that. And I'm looking forward to it, actually, I have to say. It's going to be very interesting. It's always good to see new books on Dune and new publications, etc. So I'll try and get you some more details on the channel and onto Twitter before that. And it's very interesting, actually, in terms of my own work, in terms of my PhD on Dune. I never got near that sort of stuff, and it was it's a huge part of Dune, and very much looking forward to looking at getting a copy of Cara's book, actually, and reading through it and adding it to my big Dune collection. So there we go. That's a little bit of news. And if anybody does have any questions, fire away, by the way, if anybody's out there. And I'll get a wee quick sip of fluids. Starting to feel a bit more like a radio show. This is maybe a bit of a Jack Burton on the Pork Chop Express, if anybody knows what I mean. Oh, let me lift my chair up a bit. There we go. So this week we've finished up with our videos on the Pelipids. For Dune fans, it might not be too obvious what that's all about. Excuse me. But essentially within the Dune universe, House Atreides, Paul Atreides, Leto Atreides, etc., are very much a part of what we call the curse of the House of Atreus. And there's a deliberate link to the lineage of this family from Greek mythology and history to Paul and Leto Atreides. And so the videos that we did, the 3 Pelipid videos, which it's very heavy stuff, I have to say. Not the nicest of stories. Very, very gruesome. What we've done our best to really do is to take you through the original narratives, to just to show you the genealogical line of the Peloponnesians. And I suppose the point is that I like to make is that Frank's quite subtle about this, and most of the time, and occasionally he's quite blatant about talking about the House of Atreus. So yeah, it's an interesting set of myths, and how he plays with it is quite subtle. So there's Babs. Hi, Babs. I'm listening, Doc, cooking my dinner. Ah, excellent, Babs. I hope you're having a nice meal. We're not long after some burgers and chips here ourselves. So the weather's settled a bit here, Babs, I have to say, and it's I don't think we'll be getting cut off tonight. Hopefully, it's got a lot milder, though it's still quite cold. So I don't know if you've seen all the videos on the Peloponnesians, Babs, and I ended it with that little bit. I actually cut it down a wee bit just for time, but it's that scene from Dune where everything's moving, the storm is coming, and Paul is unable to move, and he's unable to move until the point where his child is sacrificed, Leto II. And this is, as many Dune fans know, that Leto II, the God Emperor, is not really the first person to have that name. He's really actually Leto III. So Paul Atreides, with all of his prescience, allows his son to be sacrificed to the enemy. And it's to do with his various visions of the Golden Path. And it's an absolute, as I like to put it, it's a complete inversion, pretty much, of the sacrifice at Aulis, which within the Trojan War is a story to do with the second time that the Greek fleet arrive at Aulis, which is a port in Boeotia. And because of Agamemnon's actions, and particularly in relation to a sacred deer and another boast about being better than a god, which is an act of hubris, this causes ultimately Artemis to quieten the fleet at Aulis, becalm it completely, and the seer Calchas then, through ornithomancy, determines that the only way for the fleet of 1,000 ships to sail towards Troy, the only way for that to happen is for Agamemnon to sacrifice his most beautiful daughter, Iphigenia, which he happily does. I suppose, regardless of the curse of the House of Atreus, whatever we think about it, the one ongoing motif of this family is that they are happy to sacrifice their children, in all sorts of ways, up to and including eating them. And if we look at Dune in a certain way, I suppose, if we peel back what Herbert's trying to do with this book and think about all the little people and so on, the actions of the Atreides are just as bad as the actions of the Harkonnen, the Emperor. There are no little people, if you like, in the Dune series. And I suppose the way I tend to look at it is that Paul and Ali are very, very much representing, or have this divine overlay of Apollo and Artemis. I think I chatted a wee bit about this the other night, that in relation to their divine mother, Leto, there's associations with prescience, sun gods, etc., and a moon goddess, if you like, the goddess of the hunt and stuff like that. But these various associations are overlaid on Paul and Alia, and if we think about the massive slaughter that they bring to the entire Dune universe, billions and billions of people dead, then we start to sort of link this up with some of these stories to the Peloponnesians and start to understand their behavior. And as I said, Frank's not very blatant about it, but their actions, for in particular for me, would mirror that of the story associated with Tantalus's daughter, Niobe. Niobe, all tears, who Artemis sends Apollo and Leto, the goddess Leto, sends her children Artemis and Apollo to slaughter all of the children of Niobe. And this is another myth associated with the Peloponnesians and with Mount Sipylus, which is particularly associated with Tantalus, Pelops, Niobe, and Proteus, I think, as well. and it's actually where we get the downfall of Tantalus. So she becomes this. The gods cannot actually. It's another quite good example of how nasty the gods are in Greek mythology. They just can't stand her crying, her sorrow over the loss of all her children. So they turn her to stone. But the stone keeps weeping. And so, if we think about the children of Niobe, there's actually how do I put it, an underlying reality to that story as well. And she's meant to have 16 children. And again, in one version of the myth, one of them survives. But I suppose within the Pelopids of Dune, a lot of it, as I said, is not obvious. And where it is obvious, I think, yeah, probably the example of, as I said, Paul waiting. And in this case, if we talk about the inversion of the sacrifice at Aulis, it's Paul that's becalmed while the nature, the storm is in full swing. All of the Fremen, all of everyone's heading into battle, and he will not move, and he cannot move. And it is, as if you think about it, gender swap, complete inversion. Instead of the wind being becalmed and the war machine being becalmed, it's the individual leader, and while everything else. So it's a complete opposite. And we get a bunch of these little nods, I think. And as I said, it's quite subtle. And I've talked about a lot of authors doing this over the years. The use of mythology within science fiction and fantasy literature is huge. I think, especially having a chat with some people about, I kind of know a lot of these myths, and well, I know a hell of a lot of them, actually, to be honest, but I always had the assumption that they were in the general consciousness, certainly within Western civilization, that we understood who people like Agamemnon, Atreus, Clytemnestra, Achilles, and even events like the Trojan War. I thought they were in kind of the general consciousness, but I think, to be honest with you, having chatted with people, and certainly my own students these days, I don't think that's true anymore. I think how we tell stories, how we absorb stories is completely different these days, and especially with changes in literacy and media over the last 120, 130 years. So it's all a wee bit. I think it's a wee bit sad, to be honest. I'm a great advocate of I don't work as a professional classicist, but I'm a great advocate of the classics and of that type of education, because I think it's pretty fun. It's very interesting. And it's a type of education that used to be kind of standard here, probably in the UK, with about 100 years ago or so. And it's certainly now considered an elite form of education. It's extremely difficult to get into a classical studies degree course. It's impossible in Ireland because there aren't any. But there you go. You can do a little bit of it, I suppose, I think at A level. But it's a very, very minor thing. So there we go. And just in terms of, that's the Pelopids. I hope you've enjoyed the videos. It is very difficult to put together just the narrative to create the genealogical line, I think, of the Pelopids. And I've done my best to provide as many art, in terms of the art and artifacts that you see on the screen in those videos. There's a couple where we've had to use stories that are very similar, but very rarely. So I'd give you an example. Is that one of the pictures in the last episode is of Menelaus and Helen meeting Telemachus as he searches for Odysseus, but we've used it as them meeting Orestes, because it's a very similar thing. But apart from that, we've tried our best to find on the web as many artifacts and pieces of art throughout the ages that focus on these individuals. So it's been quite tricky, and at the same time trying to tell the story of the Pelopids in a sanitized way. Because it's an absolute thing of horror and nightmares. Excuse me, it's not that easy. Bear with me 1 second, folks. Oh. When I grab my wee rags for my arms, there we go. So yeah, it's an odd thing, and this stuff's very much a fundamental, I think, to Western civilization. The story of the Pelopid line really takes you through various practices of human sacrifice, within the ancient world that ultimately see it, I suppose, that take us to a point where that stops happening. Then we get animal sacrifice, and we get the introduction of, I suppose, within the play by Aeschylus, it's trying to connect the Pelopid line to the development of Athens, and the development of democracy and legal system, etc., etc. Bob says, I see where Jessica sacrificed Alia for her own comfort twice. Once to shore up her and Paul's position amongst the Fremen with the Romallo ritual, and then later by running back to Caledon. Well, arguably, yeah, absolutely. But the other one really is where, first of all, Leto and Jessica pretty much, with Leto, they pack up their entire family and move to Arrakis. A place that will condemn Paul Atreides to live there forever, regardless of what Leto wants for Paul. Is he going to be this Duke, this Mentat Duke that we hear nothing of in the Denis Villeneuve film? He's prepared to take his family, his people, and especially his son to a place where his son is going to become addicted to a drug that is fatal upon withdrawal. And it's all, regardless of what we think about the motives of Leto, it's all for power and money, to be honest with you. So yeah, and Jessica, and this is the interesting bit, Babs, I think, when I talk about this, is that the overlays of the characters from the House of Atreides, I prefer to call them the Pelopidi, there's aspects of Leto. So we have that gender inversion. Obviously, Leto's the father here, but very much Paul and Alia, Artemis and Apollo, their divine mother in this sense is Jessica as well. So this is the interesting thing. I think the idea of Leto the goddess is overlaid on both Leto Atreides and Jessica. And once Leto is dead, I think we get, Paul talks about my mother is my enemy. And understanding that no matter what he does, even if he tries, I think even if he kills himself, his mother will continue the jihad with Alia. And I suppose, yeah, that it is very interesting. Sacrificed Jessica for Alia. Jessica sacrificed Alia for home comfort. So the fact is that she's aware that she's pregnant, isn't she? When she takes the water of life. If we run with the narrative of the story, Paul tells her that she's pregnant with her. I think she already knows, obviously, because she's a Bene Gesserit, and that they're Harkonnens. So she understands perfectly that she's pregnant when she takes, the water of life. And hello, Holly. And you're right, big sausage. Hello. That's one of my dogs is just laughing. You never see them. They're always down here. They're like little sharks that run around our feet. One of them's not so little. Isn't that right, big sausage? Where you at? Hello. I couldn't say hello. She's a lovely big thing. Not right, Halls. So yeah. There she is. Look, you see. There we go. She's up to say hello. Hello. Are you all right, big sausage? Oh dear. Both our girls are rescues. She's okay. She's just jumping up on me a bit. There you go. Go see Wendy. That's a good. No, sorry about that, folks. They're big balls of furry love. We can't ignore them, So absolutely. And sorry, let me just catch up with that, Babs. The second one that you were talking about. So yeah, Alia and what that does to the child, and ultimately, she's ultimately what it does to Alia. If we look at the long term, is it drives her, and this child becomes an abomination. She's fully sentient, fully aware in the womb, and eventually goes mad and kills herself. And you're saying wants to shore up her Paul's position amongst the Fremen of the Roma, and then later by running back to Caledon. Yeah, I never quite got that actually, and I thought Jessica's a great character. Hello, Puppers. Yeah, she's just the way out there, but yeah, it's Holly Holiday. She's a great girl, so she is. So yeah, and as I said, aspects of then if we take the aspects, so I mean, the interesting thing is that it's not just we have the Atreides family, and we have what I would call this mortal overlay onto all the action and the characters in Dune. And then we have also the divine overlay from these stories as well. So it's not just the mortals that are involved in the various curses and actions of the Pelopids, but the gods themselves, who muck about a fair bit there and manipulate the situation. You know, Bab says, "I've got my own feline shark." Excellent, excellent. Yeah, our Noodles is about or somewhere. She's getting a bit weird these days, so she's starting to hide in little places and run around. It's great fun. Our Noodles, but the wife just had the girls out for me. Yeah. But yeah, so there we go. Let me just turn that back a wee bit because I was trying to show you my doggies. There we go. That's a bit more, because that's the dog bed just to the right there. So yeah, if you've got any questions about the Pelopids or any of the other kind of overlays that I've noticed, fire away. Let me see. So the story really takes us through 5 or 6 generations. In terms of the mortal overlay for Paul, we certainly have Paul is not only just Apollo, but very much so aspects of Agamemnon and Orestes in particular overlaid on Paul Atreides. And yeah, Alia, as the obvious one with Alia, is Artemis. I'm trying to think about the madness as well, but I'd say there's an element of Cassandra in Alia as well. You know, a sense of doom almost, and the fact that she operates with prescience, but can also look backward. So you can look at Apollo as a sun deity and Artemis maybe as the moon. You often see Artemis represented with like a crescent here. Though there are all sorts of sun gods and Greek gods. Sun gods and moon gods within the Greek pantheons, if you like. And it's always a bit tricky talking about the various gods and stuff like that in Greek mythology. Some of there are Olympians, and then there are other deities, and personifications and chthonic deities, and then we have a race of beings prior to the gods known as the Titans, and then prior to that we have a sort of bunch of primordial beings within Greek mythology. So this stuff's all over science fiction. I'd actually say you'd be quite hard pressed to, certainly within the 20th century and prior to that, science fiction that doesn't use mythology. I'd say it's quite rare, to be honest. There's a fundamental relationship between science fiction and mythology, I think, and I suppose it all comes down to what we think science fiction is and what we think mythology is as well. In particular, the use of the word myth today is used to suggest that something is not true, which is utter nonsense. That it never happened. It's a complete falsehood, and it shows a complete misunderstanding of mythology, which is a very particular thing, I think. And we have mythographers from the ancient world studying these stories, showing great interest and looking at the regional variations and cults and so on and so forth and what's going on. I think they're fascinating, as I'm a big fan of Apollodorus. And if you do want to read this stuff, by the way, I'll just have a wee quick. This is your book, really. This is the oldest extant work on Greek mythology by a Greek. Ancient Greek. Apollodorus' Library, Bibliothèque of Greek Mythology. So, and it's a cracking book, and it includes the. So this is what you would call the library, and what's also known. Let me see. The epitome. There we go. If I'm not mistaken, and it's rather good. This would be one of the main sources I would have used. And we have various different genealogical lines, for example, in this. I haven't used the genealogies in this book at all, in terms of putting up images, etc. But we have a range of different genealogies within Greek mythology, and as much as the Pelopid line is the one that's overlaid on top of the Atreides family and the action, there's also the Agenorid line and the idea of Thebes and Oedipus and etc. and Laius, and that's also overlaid on the later Paul Atreides. And I'd argue that Laius is a good candidate for the Baron, in terms of his behaviour. Got a few comments from Babs. Let's see. Cassandra Alia, I thought the same thing. Babs Bell, the king of the chariot race. He was responsible for Heracles' guests. Responsible for Heracles' guests seemed the inspiration of Vlad Harkonnen. Let me see if I swear. Hang on, tell you what, Babs, I took my glasses off there. The king of the chariot race shows responsible for Heracles' quests. Seemed the inspiration. Okay. The king of the chariot race, Oanomaeus. Yeah. Yeah. I suppose he's a kind of a minor figure in this, but he's actually pretty important. Yeah. The incest run with this. The reason why I would say Laius is that Laius is a homosexual, and in particular, he's described in Apollodorus. Bear with me a second. I'll see if I can read it to you. I think it's the footnote in Apollodorus. It might be Graves. Let me just check. He's described as the first catamite. This is Laius, the father of Oedipus. We've encountered him in these videos because he's in exile, and it's his kidnapping of the boy Chrysippus, who's a son of Pelops, and then that Chrysippus' subsequent murder by Hippodamia. It's quite important to the whole thing. Laius heads off again, and there's all sorts of stuff to do with him. But bear with me a wee second. Artemis and Apollo, way back where, let's see, Trojan. But that's to do with Pelops, isn't it? And interestingly enough, I suppose we mentioned it in the videos, Babs. Laius is forgiven for kidnapping Pelops because the way I put it in the videos, it's done out of love and not any sinister motives. But understand that the gods punish Pelops for that because he shouldn't forgive him, if you see what I mean. And it leads to, let me see, bear with me a wee second. It leads to develop. There's a military cult in Thebes, which basically is a warrior cult that keeps young boys. And that's to do with Laius, by the way. So bear with me a wee second if I can find just that bit. Where would that be? Resties and thirsties. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, sometimes it's quite hard to find some of this stuff. No, I'll tell you what, I think I may have had to go to Robert Graves for this one. There's Ryan. Hi, Ryan. So it's particular. There's incest, lusting after young boys, etc. The kidnapping, the whole that thing, and he's quite a villainous. Sod is old Laius. Bear with me a wee second. Here we go. Robert Graves. All this stuff I think is in volume 2. I've got it bookmarked here. Oh, okay. Here, I'll read this to you guys. Let me just see. No, that's probably in the notes. Okay, yeah. Oh, sorry, it's actually in the previous page. I've just found it. So it happened that Laius, when banished from Thebes, was hospitably received by Pelops at Pisa, but fell in love with Chrysippus, to whom he taught the charioteer's art, and as soon as the sentence of banishment was annulled, carried the boy off in his chariot from the Nemean Games and brought him to Thebes as his catamite. Now, the footnote here, that's where I have a footnote right there. Sorry, it is in Apollodorus. The footnote is referencing Apollodorus. I'll give you some say that just to go on, it says some say that Chrysippus killed himself for shame. Others that Hippodamia, to prevent Pelops from appointing Chrysippus as successor over the heads of her own sons, came to Thebes, where she tried to persuade Atreus and Thyestes to kill the boy by throwing him down a well. When both refused to murder their father's guests, Hippodamia, at dead of night, stole into Laius' chamber, finding him asleep, took down his sword from the wall, plunged it into his bedfellow's belly. Laius was at once accused of murder, but Crispus had seen Hippodamia as she fled and accused her with his last breath. Now, just to go to the wee footnote in this, very quickly, folks. This is Robert Graves. It says the myth of Chrysippus survives in degenerate form only. That he was a beautiful Pisan boy who drove a chariot, was carried off like Ganymede or Pelops himself, though not indeed to Olympus, and killed by Hippodamia, suggests that originally he was one of the royal surrogates who died in the chariot crash. But his myth became confused with the justification of Theban pederasty, and with the legend of a dispute about the Nemean games between Thebes and Pisa. Hippodamia, horse tamer, was a title of the moon goddess whose mare-headed statue Phigalia held a Pelopid porpoise in her hand. 4 of Pelops' sons and daughters bear horses' names. So that's just the wee bit about Chrysippus and Laius, and that there's much more to him. And obviously he is the father of Oedipus. And whenever we get blind Paul, etc., then what Paul's actions towards the end of throughout the first trilogy follow, I think, 19 out of the 22 steps of Lord Raglan's ritualistic pattern from his book on the hero, and his pattern is based on Oedipus, and it's the reason why Paul matches so many. And I think ultimately that Raglan's work is that Oedipus is the template for it. So excuse me. So there's Ryan. Hi Ryan. Sorry, I had to keep going there a bit just to get all through all that. Howdy, Ryan says, Babs, long time no see. Yeah, we're just discussing the Greek myths and the Dune ties, Ryan, as Babs is saying there. So we had, I thought that was interesting because what you're saying about the king of the chariot race, responsible for Heracles' quests, Eurystheus, again, is another king bringing this in. And it's a whole, so if you can see what I mean, Babs and Ryan, why I had to try to stick to the one line of the Pelopons to go after this family, because there's so many tangential myths that are connected up all over the place. And even if you think about generationally within Greek myths, I mean, what happens to House Atreides, by the way? If you want to break it down, Dr. Yueh is your Trojan horse, etc., etc. The fall of House Atreides and all of that kind of thing. And both Troy falls because of a medical reason, technically, if you understand me, and so does House Atreides. So a lot of it's subtle by Herbert. He's not blatantly rewriting this stuff, but the indicators are all there. And he's using, in fact, Herbert uses names very, very deliberately in Dune. I don't think there's a single character name that isn't loaded with meaning. And if you think about Duncan, Idaho, and I've heard some discussions about Duncan, Idaho, what's that got to do with anything? And the Idaho River, I suppose, isn't it, in Dune itself? And the fact that it was named after him would suggest that he's making Idaho a bit of a Potomac. Sorry, is that the right word? Hang on, Potomac, river deity. Creating there's different things. Duncan, I think, has lots of associations with the King and Macbeth, but not quite, if you know what I mean. They're loose and they're tangential, but yeah, I think they're very interesting. One, as I said, if you kind of explain certain points in Dune, take an example and go, okay, here's how it's done in the Greek myth, it starts to make sense quite a bit. You can take there's a Lit Underground. Let's go. So no worries, sir. Well, thanks for joining us, the Lit Underground. If anybody's got any questions or wants me to point out anything specific, the reason why I haven't gone ahead and done another episode of identifying all of this stuff in Dune is I'll be there all year. And I thought, a bit like Frank Herbert, most of you have read the book, maybe you'll start to see it. And we have obvious references to the House of Atreides mentioned, the Curse of the Atreides, etc., etc. It is all there. Even if you take Malky, from God Emperor, and Malky's the boon companion of the god, of the gods, who shares his secrets. And Malky's got analogues with Tantalus, for example. And there are plenty of boon companions to the gods. And it's a very loaded phrase, by the way. I use the term boon companion because within Greek mythology, it often suggests sexual love. Well, sorry, there is sexual love going on, I suppose. Whenever we talk about Chrysippus, Pelops being spirit. Pelops is, depending on which myth you look at, is either taken off by Poseidon to be his lover at Olympus for a while before bringing him back with his magical winged chariot, etc. That runs across the sea without. Oh, sorry, that runs across the sea without its axles getting wet. I'll tell you one that I thought was particularly interesting. Of all the things that's about in Dune, the ornithopters. And if I could pull 100 science fiction books off my shelf and not find any words like ornithomancy, ornithopter, etc., ornithology in them, and of all the things that people move around in Dune, the ornithopter, and it's quite interesting. Ornithomancy, it's all to do with birds, and the ornithomancy is the divination of the future by birds, using birds' entrails. The term, I think I might have put this in the subtitles. The Greek terms are mantis, and the Roman terms an augur. So all of these things are the same. They're people who divine the future by reading bird entrails. And it's particularly, I thought, one of the things I thought was interesting about the Dune film was the ornithopters aren't ornithopters. They don't fly like birds. They fly like dragonflies, I think, as everybody keeps pointing out. Babs Bilo says the Trojan horse, the final Duncan Gola, was one for sure. The Thali made him a sexual weapon and sent him into the nest of the Bene Gesserits to wreak havoc. Yeah, that turn upon the whole. I often, it's one of the most memorable bits in Dune, is the whole the flipping of the sexual imprinting of Duncan Idaho. I believe that language in it is stuff like penile pulsing and vaginal pulsing and all of this stuff. And I think Frank Herbert writes sex scenes really badly. There's I think one with lots of pink sausage motifs or something in it, isn't it? I think it's just hilarious. Yeah, sexual weapon. Interesting. Trojan horses, and again, you've kind of got the point, Babs. It's done again and again. And by the time we've got to the God Emperor, I think Herbert's kind of it. I've often said that I think he's trying, as much as he's carrying on with this, he's going to reiterate it too, and he's going to show you all these warnings again. But part of the joy of the God Emperor is, I think, that he educates us a bit. He explains it to us. I told you. Frank Herbert's attempt of explaining Tantra. Tantra, yes. It went a bit. I think people often comment about the sexual nature of the last two books of the Dune series by Frank. And it's something that he goes into a wee bit. But I think there are awards for this kind of thing, by the way. People who write sex scenes really badly. It ends up with stuff like he put his purple-headed love monster into her quivering love pudding, and it's that level of. I think that's quite good, actually, but it's that level of silliness, and I don't know. It's interesting. I think you don't always have to show or go into detail about things in books. I've caught a couple of authors lately who I kind of like, but I've caught them talking enormous nonsense. And one of them was Alistair Reynolds talking about how because of the current political climate and how everybody's so delicate out there, that he's decided he's going to never read a book by anybody who's committed suicide. Which I think is appalling. What a wonderfully generally stupid statement to make. And if you could identify all the books written by people who've committed suicide, wow, you've wiped out a lot of good stuff, if you know what I mean. And even I suppose by proxy, do we have to include Plato by that? Because everything we know about Socrates pretty much comes from Plato. So should we wipe that out because Socrates committed suicide? It's bizarre. But the other one was I was reading an introduction by Neil Gaiman. I'm working at the Stars My Destination at the minute, folks. And I'm sorry, the book's not handy, but it was about how Neil Gaiman was commenting on how Alfred Bester deals with rape scene in Tiger, and he makes the outrageous comment that if Alfred Bester was alive and writing this book today, that he would fully describe the rape. I don't think he would at all. To be honest with you, not no, he's not that kind of writer, and not every writer has to be gratuitous in what they show or what they say. But yeah, I do, I do like what you said there. His attempt at explaining tantra, it really does take the whole tantric sex thing way, way off. And I suppose we already have a lot of that kind of stuff with the Bene Gesserit as well, because that ultimate control of body and prana bindu, nerve and body and muscle and all of this kind of thing. And we get the Bene Gesserit are pretty, can use sex as a weapon and all sorts. But it's the honored matres that turn up, I suppose. They've all gone a bit sadistic and a bit kinky, and it's it is interesting, I think. And I suppose in terms of sex and reproduction, a lot of it's talked of in the background of the Dune universe. It's more about genetics, really, and I think that's actually quite interesting. I don't know what you guys think. The other topic that I was sort of talking about was that I think that Denis Villeneuve's Dune is possibly the most dumbed down version of Dune that's in existence. And I did find the DVD, by the way, folks. And the reason why I wanted to point this out is that the whole discussion of, oh, you can't have everything in this film. We can't show this, we can't do that. He's got to chop and paste. I found it. Here you go. So this is the remastered TV series that I picked up on a bargain bin the other day. Digitally remastered. Frank Herbert's Dune, Emmy Award winning. Impressive, says the New York Times. A sci-fi high five from People magazine. But what I did note very specifically is how long it is. All of it. To the point where I wanted to write it down. It's 4 hours and 36 minutes. And this gets an awful lot. Not all of it, and they muck about a wee bit, but it gets an awful lot of Frank Herbert's Dune into the actual, the TV series, mini series, whatever you want to call it. And if we understand that's 4 hours 36 minutes, and they do such a good job, I think. Now there's little problems with the TV mini series, but Denis Villeneuve's over 2.5 hours in, and he's almost said nothing. And I really think let's be visual. I do get it, by the way. We're going to make a visual film, and I've been watching people talk about, yeah, we understand, we like it, we get it. Particularly people who haven't read the book are enjoying it, and they're enjoying it visually, and they don't really have a clue what's going on. I said my own wife watched the film and had no idea what was happening in it at all, and I've started to describe it as, look at the shiny, shiny. By the way, Babs, last time we spoke, I don't think you'd seen the film. Have you seen it yet? Do let us know, please. We were having a wee chat with Brad in Australia last night, and he's managed to see it. We didn't get too much out of him because he was at work, but we're still looking forward to hearing what Brad thinks. But I hope you've seen it, Babs, and by now. And if you haven't, let me know. I'll sort something out for you. So there we go. But if you've got any questions, guys, fire away. As I said, the Greek mythology stuff, I'm fascinated by it. I've loved it my entire life, and it's often misunderstood and altered heavily, I suppose, over the years. And the other thing I think I was talking about mentioning was that how Hollywood and I suppose the movie industry is deciding what's palatable. That what can your audience take, and as much as that's part of any author's desire to to understand their audience and to not alienate them. I don't know. I'm just a bit things like the Baron. For example, the Baron Harkonnen's just a fat guy now, and I think the desire to not offend the gay community, for example, because there's lots of issues to do with Frank Herbert's attitudes to homosexuality. But simply put, the Baron Harkonnen is a homosexual paedophile. End of story. And he's very fat as well. But not anymore. It's sanitization. And in particular, I suppose, the grotesquerie of the Baron and certain things that happen in the Dune universe are part of that grotesquerie of the Pelopits. And remember that, the Baron is Paul's grandfather. He This is not just pedophilia; it's incest we're talking about as well. No, sir, I haven't seen it yet. Being a broker puts the kibosh on such. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Babs. Let me see what I can do, because I'm in the same boat, Babs. And I think, as I pointed out to you, my cinema journey was half my bank account. But yeah, no, we'll have to get you to see it. I think somehow, by hook or by crook, as I like to think. I'm a person who can make things. I tend to make things happen by forcing the issue a lot. Which it's kind of my main modus operandi. But we'll see if we can get to something about that, Babs. Because I actually have a copy of it, but not that I'll be doing anything illegal with it. But you never know. Yeah, see what I can do. Babs, send me an email if you can to the science fiction station at gmail.com, and I'll see if I can send you a link to something. Hopefully it might work. And maybe you can see it, But yeah, it's funny enough, I saw it up on I think it was on Amazon Prime to watch there, because we don't have HBO Max here. I think they're charging about 15 quid for it, but I've had the opportunity to go back and see it in the cinema. I'm not going to take it, to be honest. As much as it's all super IMAX friendly and all this stuff, it was really appalling cinema experience for us, and I wouldn't want to risk it again, knowing that the film's not designed for a normal cinema. I don't know, Babs. I'm not too sure if you're going to like it, to be honest. It's as I would say to you, probably a bit like my opinion evolves. I'm not set in stone. I tend to think about things, mull over them, keep thinking about it. And I've seen the thing about 3 or 4 times now, skipping through, looking at certain bits and stuff and trying to analyze it. And I'm probably going to get to the point where I'm going to make some notes on it, just to see really how disparate it is from Frank Herbert's vision, I think. But I've started to think, certainly even with the environmental issues today, I think Frank will be turning in his grave. Certainly, at the loss of the environmental message, the major ecological theme, But yeah, so there we go. But Intellect's revenge. What was it? Oscar Wilde said that criticism is intellect's revenge on art. Pretty sure it was him. I hope it is. My old memory is getting a bit fuzzy. But I was starting to think of Dune, Denis Villeneuve's Dune, as art's revenge on intellect. I thought I'd twist that around a bit, and it seemed to make sense. And the more and more I think about the film, the more it's been just stripped of any meaning at all. And Paul's a bit emo, I suppose. I think he's not quite as intellectual or focused, I think, as he is in the book. Intellectually curious, I suppose. But I'm starting to find it a bit bizarre, to be honest with you. I'm starting to enjoy David Lynch's Dune much, much more, I think. Oh, no worries, Babs, at all. Just so that I can send something to you. If it'll work, I'll send it, and it'll be hush hush on the QT and all a bit bibbity bop. But we'll see what we can do. Not guaranteeing anything, Babs, but we'll have to do something, I think. Because I want to talk to you about your opinions. Really do want to talk to you about your opinions of the film, because you're very well informed, Babs. Yeah, so I mean, you were saying about Jessica, Leto, Paul and Alia, very much so. And if we think about the various, there's all sorts of aspects to, as I said, baby Leto the second is Iphigenia, that sacrifice. And Potomai was the word I was looking for earlier, by the way, river gods, and if you think about how the god emperor is, some of it's kind of, you might go, I think you're making a wee bit of loose connections here and there, but it is in depth, and it is subtle, and it's spiral. And we see this in Dune. And in particular, folks, if you really are interested in this, bear with me. Yeah, there it is. in relation to that sort of the spiral fractal aesthetic, um, this is your book here, Chaos Theory, Asimov's Foundation and Robots, and Herbert's Dune. Now, it's by Donald E. Palumbo, and I think this is one of those, probably a PhD turned and published. It's not all on Dune, unfortunately. It covers Asimov, but it discusses how, I suppose, some people consider Dune to be a response to Asimov's Foundation. Excuse me. They're both galactic empires, and they kind of how would I put it? I suppose one is order to chaos perspective, and the other is a chaos to order perspective. And again, this book, obviously, I've annotated the heck out of this and stuff, but it's highlighted it. He's got loads of stuff here. Yeah, I think this is a really good book, by the way, folks. He's got all sorts, but it's the cyclical nature of the monomyth, fractal patterns, etc. Particularly focusing on Dune. Where do picks go? But and it's a good book. I really enjoyed reading it. Let me see, just to give you a wee bit of an idea. So it's in 3 parts, really. First part's about Foundation series. Second part's about Asimov's robot stories and other novels. So for the Dune fan, it's only the back of the book, really. 139 to page 183. So plots within plots, patterns and within patterns, chaos theory, structures and concepts in the Dune series. The monomyth is a fractal pattern in Dune series, and the monomyth and chaos theory. Perhaps we should believe in the magic. So that's the 3 sort of essays, if you like, on Frank Herbert in here. And I suppose it is analysing it from a Jungian point of view as well, because that the monomyth is Jungian entirely, Yeah. And interestingly enough, I'd challenge you to go and find stories as absolutely nutty as the ones in Greek mythology, and there are much, much worse ones. But there's a level of how would I put it? They're very idiosyncratic. And there are not analogues for some of these stories elsewhere in the world. They might be repeated in cyclical repetitious patterns within that same culture, but the idea of the monomyth is not a good one. And I suppose it's an interesting idea that it speaks to the universality of all our stories, but the only universality to these stories is that there are people involved. And sooner the cultural flair is a bit different, So it's interesting. I was saying to a few people, that I got a really interesting email or a message on one of the videos there. I can't remember who it's from. I do apologize. But it was talking about, and the person said, interesting. So the Hellenic kind of myths are the overlaid structure, which Herbert then puts on, Islam, Arabia, all the different cultures, different languages, and builds that in and around. But fundamental to the core of it is the Atreides and who they are and what they do. And I thought it was quite interesting that we were talking about, well, just in the comment that I made, that Herbert borrows from so many cultures and takes, and you have to understand that myths are fundamental to many cultures. They're their earliest kind of attempts to, well, earliest, not the earliest. They're interesting forms of storytelling that survive in a certain way, and depict certain things. It depends on, and as I said, the best way I think to look at myth is through archaeological evidence. Number one. And if you haven't got that, obviously literary texts, archaeological fact, and if you haven't got that, then it's time to sort of go in a social, cultural, anthropological point of view, I suppose. But there are many ways that people look at myth, and they're not necessarily all valid. And I know, I think we're up to the point where I was chatting last night. We got cut off, so that's great. And I had a wee chat about this. Something. There's lots of naysayers about books and stuff in the world, and I'm not particularly one of them. I stopped being a computing and information systems lecturer because I got bored, really badly bored of teaching the same nonsense day, week in, week out, and kind of rotating it every 12 weeks or so. and wanted to go back to literature. When you study literature, if you read a book, you're going to read it differently than everyone else on the planet. And as much as I've ended up teaching sometimes the same book over and over again, there's books that are perennial here that the schools always teach, things like Kill a Mockingbird and Mice and Men and stuff like that. And probably forever doing Macbeth or Hamlet. Excuse me. But sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, in terms of in terms of what people think about books, it's great to chat to other people about what did you think of it. I think Dr. Cara Kennedy pointed out to me the other day, I think, because I hadn't got round to this, but she said, no, Bene Gesserit, I think Bene Gesserit don't kill anybody in Dune, as far as I can tell. I did not know that. And it's interesting. But to discredit a piece of work, if it's a piece of work of its times, and this is Lord Raglan's The Hero, it's generally considered not good. In terms of, well, depends on what you want to use it for. I think it's a wonderful book, and as much as I don't I don't hold truck with Raglan, and it's a fascinating book. And if you're simply interested in the stories and how he really does present it as tradition, ritual, and drama and myth, and I suppose he has some interesting ideas. But it's great. It is in terms of what it takes you through, and he has his 22 steps, his little profile. And if you look at the videos that I've done, we take Paul Atreides through those 22 steps. We go through Raglan's 22, and immediately after that, we run through Paul and see how he scores. Because many heroes, I suppose he looks at mythical heroes, fictional heroes, real heroes, and so on and so forth. His conclusion, by the way, is this. The conclusion, and it's not a conclusion, it's the back of the book, but his conclusion suggests itself is that the god is the hero as he appears in ritual, and the hero is the god as he appears in myth. In other words, the hero and the god are two different aspects of the same human being. Now, regardless of what you think of Lord Raglan's work, this is a book used by Frank Herbert heavily. And just in terms of what people think of it, I think it's a great read. I wouldn't cast it aside in terms of more modern, better researched, well-developed mythography. It is a thing of worth, and I really enjoy reading it, by the way. And as much as I go, Raglan doesn't get, it's still a damn good book, and I highly recommend it to anybody. It's there you go. I'm a second-hand bookshop hunter. Basically, I don't buy new books hardly ever because I can't afford to. But I bought that years ago, and it's a great book, and it goes very handily with. Just now, this is one that I don't think Herbert used, so you'll not find it in my work. But if you were looking at this, On Heroes, Hero Worship, and the Heroic in History by Thomas Carlyle. Sorry, I've just got another wee handy volume classic, and that other one there was an Everyman edition. I love books like that; they're really nice. You don't get them very often. Lovely paper as well. There he is. Published in New York. They're not particularly old books, And he looks at the hero as divinity, prophet, poet, priest, man of letters, and as king. So, you would not enjoy reading. I suppose if you wanted to know your stuff, this is more like it. And Graves's Greek myths are very, very thorough. Depending on who you are, you might discredit Graves for some of his work. But in terms of academic chops, I think the Greek Myths, Volume 1 and 2 by Robert Graves is a masterpiece. And there's a lot of people that don't know how to take his work. And I, for one, I think it's very good and it has merit. And certainly if you start looking at archaeological evidence and things like that, it starts to make a bit of sense. So both Apollodorus's Library of Greek Mythology and Robert Graves's The Greek Myths, they're heavily annotated, lots of footnotes, lots of references, and both texts look at local and regional variations of these myths because there's so many. But there you go. I'll tell you what, folks, it's 11 o'clock. Has anybody got any questions for me? Because I've been gabbing for so long. I'm going to take a slurp of some precious fluids, or any comments at all. Give us a wee type, and otherwise I'll just have to keep talking, won't I? Not that I mind that. That's what we're here for. Oh, I wanted to say to you folks, by the way, I think I mentioned the launch of Cara Kennedy's book earlier, and which looks really interesting. Can't wait to get a copy of that. And I've got a sort of proof copy here at the minute that I'm going to have to pile through over the next few days. But I'm looking forward to reading it. We've been having a chat with a few people, and some people would like me to try and do a kind of book club thing with Dune. Not too sure how to go about it, but I think we're going to try and set it up, and possibly pick a day in the week like Monday. I'll just hit a chapter at a time, and basically, I think it's been put out that I know an awful lot about this, and that really, I understood it's studied quite a bit in America, and not over here or anything, but in American schools and colleges. So yeah, I've got tons of material on Dune, and I have a very detailed eye. So hopefully, I get about a week or two to sort of try to create a kind of weekly structure for the science fiction station. And we'll try and get up a couple of live streams a week. One, hopefully, doing a kind of book thing with Dune, and we'll maybe try to go all. I was saying, I find it very difficult to come back to the Dune books, simply because I've read them so many times and I've wrecked them. I've wrecked so many of them that I've only got a couple of copies left. I've also given lots of copies of Dune to people, so I've been a great ambassador for the book over the years. But most of my copies are in ruins. I think the last time I took a paperback one off the shelf. Excuse me. Yeah, there we go. Just to give you an idea of the state of my Dune books. Oh, I got Brian Herbert falling down on me. If I open this one up, so, there we go. Don't even get too far into it. They're just in bits. That's kind of what I do to Dune. Well, I think this is the last copy that I actually used for work, really just to get highlighting quotes. But I'd written over them and the spines had gone, and so I have one nice hardback copy. But I've got 4 or 5 versions of each book. Actually, Babs is saying Graves' Greek myth is available as an audiobook here on YouTube. That'll be interesting, Babs. I think if you're going to get it as an audiobook, then you're going to miss a lot. Unless they actually, because it's, and the interesting thing about Graves' book and Polydorus is that it's almost like he's trying to do what this guy did 2,000 years later, and they go so well together. But there are various little notes, and as I said, whenever you read through, for example, there's the 11th labor of Heracles. Now, just to show you how Graves' works, so we've got the apples of the Hesperides. So we've got about 3 pages and they're paragraph section, and each one's got a note. And then basically at the end of it, what you get is all the source material, which is here, usually starting with Apollodorus and ending up with the Romans, and then you get the notes, which are mighty and fascinating. The notes are almost better than the story, I have to say. It's got a fantastic. Oh, by the way, Babs, it's one of those books that you kind of need to have an index with, because there are multiple people with the same name. As we've checked in the Pelopids, there's more than one king called Tantalus, for example. But if you ever get a hold of Robert Graves, listen to it in audio. Would be a great way of going through them. All the references are only in volume, or all the footnote index is only in volume 2. So if you're the copy that I have, well, I've got 2 copies of it. I've got a very nice copy that I won't write on, which is a pleasure book, if you like. Yeah, so volume 1 has all the maps in it, but not the index, and volume 2 has the index, but not the maps. That's this copy anyway, from Penguin. Oh no, there's a map there. So there we go. But yeah, fascinating stuff, I have to say. And I'm starting to think, yeah, it's just all over the place within Dune, and there are so many aspects of it. We get different people. I think what was interesting one, by the way, folks, is to do with the sun going backwards, and that's that within the Pelopid line. That's the story of the Dial of Ahas, isn't it? Ahias, which is a biblical story apparently, but it's again, you'll find that stories that you see in the Bible, for example, are plundered from elsewhere in older cultures. So yeah, Graves is great. I'm a big fan of Robert Graves. For those who don't know him, he'd be the author of I Claudius, and he's also got a book called The White Goddess, which is a bit not so factual, more, but it's an interesting book. But he's very much invested in the classical world. Very smart guy, and there's also, by the way, a rather large encyclopedia of Greek mythology by Graves, and I had a copy and I lent it to someone and I've never got it back, sadly, because it's an excellent book as well. I must try and track another copy of that down second hand. But there you go. So yeah, so many of the stories overlaid onto aspects of it, or aspects of behavior, or aspects of character, but repetition, family on family. There's the incest, murder, etc., etc. And it's all particularly gruesome, and I think the Dune universe is quite gruesome as well, to be honest with you. Excuse me a second. My coffee has gone disgustingly cold. If anybody knows the quote from Where Eagles Dare by Richard Burton, isn't it? He says that they say that the advantage in drinking cold coffee is that one can't taste the coffee. I can taste it rightly, I suppose. There you go. Yeah, the Greek myths, fantastic. I would actually argue Apollodorus is easier to read, believe it or not. But if you're interested, and you can get this on, you should be able to get this through Project Gutenberg, free online. And I dare say somebody's probably read it on YouTube as well. The Library of Greek Mythology, as it's known, has different names. So some, depending on what language, it's sometimes known as the Bible of Greek Mythology, because the word biblios means library. A very, very good book, I have to say. So yeah, we're thinking on doing a Dune book club, and if anybody's got any ideas about that or how I might go about it, I'm not too sure, but I think it would be, Dune doesn't really, I suppose it has chapter separations by the little biographies and hagiographies and things like that. But I would probably just do X amount of pages there. I know that there's a few people that do this online, and I've watched Danica 19, I think it's called. Her book club's pretty good. I think she's way down at around God Emperor of Dune, but it's, I suppose I have a different approach to most things and than most people. So it's one of those reasons why I ended up doing a science fiction thesis at this point, I suppose, which is not very common, to be honest with you. And certainly it was pretty much almost unheard of back when I did it. So it's, blah blah blah. I'm trying to think of some other things there, but it was, just giving you a wee bit of news. So I'll have a bit of a hopefully get some more info after the weekend about this book launch, and that'll be women, as I said, it's on women's agency in the Dune universe, and we're going to probably be just a question and answer session. I don't have all the details yet, but hopefully we'll know by Monday. And I said that's going to be on, for me in the UK, it'll be the 20th, but for people in New Zealand, I think it would be the 21st. So it would be the 20th if you're on this western side of Britain, I suppose. But we will get details. I said I'll put a wee link to it on the community section of the channel. And let me see, what else are we working towards? So thanks very much, by the way, everybody, for the positive feedback on the Greek mythological stuff. I wasn't too sure, really. As I said, I've set my little camp out as being a science fiction station, and science fiction, I suppose science fiction and the classical world have equal merit in my life. And I've spent an awful lot of my life looking at them from a critical point of view, but just because I enjoy them, it's and I suppose the way I have it looking at things is a bit full on sometimes. I'm a devil's in the detail kind of person. I'm a bit of a pedant, To be honest with you. But yeah, if you can listen to either of those, Babs. I also Stephen Fry does a lot of Greek mythology stuff, I think, these days, and he's very good at presenting it in a palatable way. I think, because again, it's difficult topic sometimes, particularly with the names. Um, and particularly with place names and so on, and it is a disassociation from your own culture in a way. I'd be in for another Dune book club for sure. Love getting others' ideas about most things. Yeah, as I said, I wasn't too sure because I thought there were plenty of them out there, to be honest with you, and I'm not too sure about how to go about it. But in terms of me, I'd say you'd be hard pressed to get me to read Dune again unless it was in a kind of educational environment. Because I have read it that many times. It's funny though, and I'd argue it's the last two Benny Gesserit books, Babs. They're the ones I've read the least. But I'd say the other four almost equal weighting. Maybe Jude, yeah. But I suppose at a certain point, I wasn't. When I was looking at these books, I would have stopped reading them and started to skim reading them, if you see what I mean, for trying to find things on them. But yeah, as you were saying, the Trojan horse, the Duncan Hydro. If you take a look at Doctor Yui, for example, and there's other aspects that, if you think about it, one of the things that we put into the videos is what we call a casus belli, which is a cause or justification for war. And within the Trojan War, the casus belli is the kidnapping of Helen, and it's not really the casus belli at all. But the fundamental point is that there's a divine overlay in that. We've talked about that there's also a divine reason for the Trojan War, and this is Zeus, and simply put, he has a prophecy that one of his children will surpass him, and he doesn't know which one. So depending on which version of the myth you read, it's either Themis that knows this or Prometheus that knows this, and arguably that's why some say that why one of the reasons why Prometheus is chained to the rock in the Caucasus, for understanding. And I think Shelley, isn't it? Shelley wrote Prometheus Unbound, didn't he? But Prometheus Bound is another play by Aeschylus, which is in fact, I'd tell you, if anybody hasn't read plays by Aeschylus, so we've got the Agamemnon, the Oresteia, those three. Sorry, the Agamemnon, the Libation Bearers, and the Eumenides, and then we've got Seven Against Thebes, and oh goodness, we've Prometheus Bound, and we've got two others, and that's the complete works of Aeschylus. And I've got my Oresteia here. Have we got the others? I think like some Greek playwrights, we have more of their stuff than others. And some stuff survives only in fragments, But yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. It's been a great experience tuning in for digging into the deeper themes. Thanks, Babs. It's I don't know, because it would seem a bit, maybe if I'm teaching it a bit, it'd be a bit informal, I suppose, or sorry, a bit formal, and I prefer this kind of informal environment. But yeah, we'll have to figure out some way of operating it. I've not done this kind of thing before, and I think just taking it one a week, having a look at it, discussing what's set up. I think Dune's a very well written book, and I have to say, exceptionally well written. And I think it's got a lot to do with its longevity. Why it's science fiction does have a lifespan to a degree. You've missed the Catamites. We were chatting about them a bit earlier. They're colleges and cannibals. Colleges and cannibals says, have I missed the Catamites? Yeah, we did cover a wee bit about that in more detail, actually, and we actually read a bit of it from. I think I read the section from Robert Graves there, colleges and cannibals. So yeah, it goes on. I actually chatted a little bit about the Theban practice with the military cult there, that they kept young boys, and that often the Laius myth is used as a justification for that. Graves has some interesting comments on it. But it was also a suggestion that Laius, the father of Oedipus, is a good model for the Baron Harkonnen. Um, you know, hmm. But yeah, and I suppose the one thing that we're having a wee chat about, so I mean that's another mythical line, and it's not heavy, I suppose, in terms of it. But after Baz, you sure did. We discussed Laius and Vladimir Harkonnen. Yes, indeed. And we're also having a wee chat, colleges and cannibals, about how well we've just briefly mentioned how sanitized the Baron is. No, and he's basically just a I don't know. As I suppose as an attempt to be more sensible to people's attitudes today. Well, no worries, colleges and cannibals. Cannibals. we'll rewatch. Thanks, he says. Um, yeah, it's particularly the Baron is a grotesque figure, and he's deliberately meant to be. And I think a lot of his grotesquerie is, the attitudes of some of Herbert's ideas, which are mostly to do with genetics, I think. But the fact that the Baron is a incestuous homosexual paedophile, um, who's also happens to be fat. I think the thing that I finding quite bizarre is that's just too much for an audience to take these days. Um, and he's just a big fat guy now. So I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know. It seems very strange. And there's other aspects to the Baron as well. The thing is, he's meant to be an obvious villain, I think, but because Herbert's very good at telling you to look at the obvious thing. Does that make sense? It's the things it's the little things, and almost everything that bad happens in the Dune universe happens because of a random reason, and I think that's particularly interesting because if we look at it's something that I pointed out. I hope I pointed it out in the videos. Everything that really bad happens to most of the Pelopids is the result of oracular prophecy. Should I go and do this? Apollo says, "Yay!" And yeah, only the Lynch. Grim, hi, Grim Dark. Good to see you, sir. Only the Lynch film for adaptations showed Baron Harkonnen's sexual deviancy. It did indeed, and he's my favorite Baron by far. Yeah, this is what I'll do to the Duke and his son. He's a great actor. Like I can't remember his name for the life of me, and that's completely very bad of me. I'm going to look it up right now because I usually remember his name. And the best Baron ever. Come on, where are we? Who plays the Baron? Oh, they're all in alphabetical. Kenneth McMillan, isn't it? It is indeed. Yeah. What a great, and I think he didn't live too long after that. I might not be sure. Was Dune his last film? No, 1984. He died in 1980. No, last film's 1989. Kenneth McMillan. What a fantastic Baron, eh? And oh, sorry, we just have a wee bit of chat there. Although whatever heart plugs he pulls from the slave's bodies, yeah. Bob says, "Well, folks, I'm out. Have a great night day. I'll keep an eye for the new book club." No worries, Babs. I'll do a wee bit of announcing, etc., and hopefully we'll put something up. But I've kind of got to. Looks like I'll be doing 3 or 4 maybe videos a week, so we'll have to get some kind of structure for it. And if anybody has any suggestions about it, let me know at the science fiction station at gmail.com. But for me, it's I'd love to do it if we could just jump straight into Dune Messiah. I'll be right there. It's just having to return to Dune again, having just recently read it. But I think I could very much deal with it in small chunks, Baron obviously villainous to the point of Panto. Yeah. And I think we were having a wee chat the other day that somebody mentioned the other day about them finding the TV series a bit camp. And I couldn't find it, and I will have to look it up. But there's a quote by Frank who, as much as Dune is all of these things, he also thought it should be a bit camp. And his words, and I suppose again we're going back to the 60s, maybe, but that might have been an interview maybe from later on. but it does have bizarre moments in it, and there are things that are quite strangely funny, I think, in June. I have to say, there's the odd time I have a good giggle. Children of June on Amazon Prime now. And you mean good things to Herbert used to screen his organisation. Oh, hang on, sorry, I missed a few things. Good thing to Herbert using to screen his organisation of the non-obvious, I think. Children on June, you mean on Amazon Prime? What did I say there? I'm not too sorry. Sometimes I just natter away. We were talking a wee bit about this June, and then I suppose Children of June. I kind of tend to see them as I know they're. So are they probably made by the same people? I don't know. In fact, that's the other Children of June. Sorry, Children of June, the TV series. Let me just catch that June TV series. Yeah. Well, to me, sorry, that's what's it called, mini series or whatever. Both of those is that's what I would consider the TV series, if you like, because they run on really. They do go together. And I really like them. I have to say, the point I think for anybody who's joining us just now that we made earlier, by the way, was I got round to writing it down. The entire mini series is 4 hours and 36 minutes. That's up to the end of June. So Denis Villeneuve's film is going to come in June Part 1 by Denis Villeneuve is going to come in longer than that. They've barely got any exposition or anything in the first half of the film, you know. Oh, have you not seen it? Sorry, I'll just get back to colleges. Grimdark says Raban's actor in the Lynch film was originally supposed to play the Baron, but he refused to gain the weight required and was cast as Raban instead. I think Kenneth McMillan was a great, a great Baron. There's a wonderful picture of him with I might be wrong. Is it the actress that plays Alia? And it's just him. It's a between scenes thing. I think I put it in one of my videos at some point. I just thought he was a great actor, and what he brings, it's totally over the top, but then he has these little moments of calm, and the Baron's an absolute nut. I think the House Harkonnen comes across as suitably demented. I think in David Lynch's Dune. I have to check something, by the way, guys, because I think there's a moment in the TV series, the Dune TV series, that really I think that is actually something that's not in the book that they've put in that's something to do with the Pelopid line, and I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to check it. If you haven't seen it, Colleges and Cannibals, it's been re-released, digitally remastered, and I picked it up in a bargain bin the other day in this local supermarket for a couple of quid. It's really good. Now, it's if you're a person who's just totally impressed by great special effects and look at the shiny, you'll probably not like it. But if you want something that's pretty true to the book, and it is a very good piece of entertainment, some of the actors aren't so good. There's some things that aren't, budgetary constraints or whatever. But on the whole, it's really good. And I think it's Alec Newman that plays Paul Atreides. First non-dark-haired Paul Atreides, I suppose he's blonde. He's really good. He's an excellent Paul. So check it out. It's definitely worth a watch. And then the Children of June miniseries is actually June Messiah and Children of June together. And that'll take you through the first 3 books pretty faithfully. Not always, but pretty faithfully. But an awful lot more, in those, as I said, I'm just starting to think of Denis Villeneuve's. If it's 2.5 hours and add another 2.5 hour film, that's 5 hours. And I can't explain things to you in that time. Sorry, someone else has already beat you. And to say that you can't do it and it will just show things, I don't know. I think it's a bit disingenuous. I don't buy it. Grimdark saying Irulan's role in the miniseries was expanded, but we were having a wee chat about that the other day, Grimdark. Just saying, by the way, folks, we got cut off last night with power cuts. So I put the stream up, but I think we lost the live chat at a certain point, and then we lost the video altogether. Which is why we're back on. Sort of thought we'd come back on tonight and run through it again, And Irulan I think is really impressive in the TV series, and they do different things with her, as you say. They really bring her to the fore quite a bit, I think, and I thought was a good idea because she's meant to be the main chronicler of at least Dune, if you know what I mean. The first book. We haven't even seen her in Denis Villeneuve, and she bookmarks, interestingly enough, I think, David Lynch's version. She's right there narrating it at the beginning, and she's there at the end, And there's not much else for Ireland to do. All of Ireland's kind of role in the book is that she's our biographer. She's the writer. She's the historian that introduces. I think in June, almost everything's from her. I believe it's there. Other books use different writers, different historians, different hagiographers, if you like. But we get from the Princess Ireland, a child's book on the life of Muad'Dib, stuff like that. The Sci-Fi Channel somehow spent 20 million on the first miniseries for its approximate budget. I'm sure William Hurt was given a lot. Laughing at it. I thought he was a good Leto, actually. I think he came across. And both and the actress who played Jessica was much older than. Let me see. I suppose it's only really the recent film that we've got quite a young Jessica. And I thought the way they played Leto and Jessica on screen was really good. They got you to emotionally invest in them, not only as individuals but as couples. And it kind of he's much better realized, I think, as a character in the TV series. And I think Jessica's character there is fantastic. The problem with the miniseries in regards to Jessica is they swap the actress. For Children of Dune, and I think it's who does it? It's Alice Krieg it becomes, isn't it? But for the life of me, I've got the right glasses on. Julie Cox, I believe, is Jessica in the TV series, the original, and I thought she was excellent, and genuinely excellent. I think really good, and I'd argue she's the best Jessica so far that we've seen on the screen. Let me see. I mean, I didn't really know her from much, to be honest. I'm not, as I say, I'm not really a person that keeps in touch with. Oh no, that's not Julie Cox. Sorry, that's the actress that played Ireland. I've got the wrong actress. Right, let's figure out who it is. She was very good. There we go. Who plays? Right. Sorry, I didn't see it. Saskia Reeves. Best known for Close My Eyes, ID, Frank Herbert's Dune, and film Are Kind of Traitor. So there we go. That's her. Saskia Reeves. Sorry about that. Plays Jessica in the TV. She's really good. I said later on she's replaced, I think, by Alice Krieg, who does a pretty good job. But yeah, her and William Hurt's relationship's really good in the TV series, and and of course we have there are things done differently. The banquet scenes there, and that's kind of where Ireland turns up as well within that, and it really does a good job of getting across the very important ecological message. It's a major interaction with Liet Kynes. And yeah, I think there's everything in terms of Liet Kynes. I think it's just been wasted, and the ecological message definitely gone from the film. But yeah, William Hurt, excellent, and it even does some of the imagery. You get to see him, his flesh coming off, some of the prophetic visions and stuff. I think the still sits look a bit daft sometimes, but it is pretty faithful to the book, I think, and certainly has the right intention, and it's good enough. I think and the shields you'll find are very similar. Some of the special effects are really good, but my only problem with Alec Newman was at the start of the film. Really, playing Paul Atreides came across as a wee bit uppity, if you know what I mean. And I don't think, and it was just to kind of, what are we doing? But once they kind of, I suppose the film again doesn't sort of start in the same way. That's how the TV series. But once it gets going, then he falls really into that character, and he plays it really well. And it's funny that it's the scene that where Paul shows how to bank all the money, rip off the emperor, sort out the smuggler, all of it, uses his mentat brain. That scene and the banquet scene in particular, they're major important. They're points. Not everything that makes Paul Atreides grow in the books is a eminent kind of Gom Jabbar test. They're not. All of his tests aren't fatal, or potentially fatal, if you see what I mean. There's different things that happen to him as he progresses. Excuse me. And yeah, it's interesting. That's something that I would actually like to see. I'd love to see a roundtable discussion between the three actors who've all played Paul Atreides. I think that would be a very interesting thing. Possibly even the three actresses that have played. Well, how many have we got now? Sorry, 1, 2, 4 actresses now that have played Jessica. It'd be just interesting to see their take on the role. But yeah, William Hurt, and again, I hadn't seen him in much for a while, but he was exceptionally good in it. There's some characters, I think. Stilgar's also replaced, I think, and Stilgar. Oh, I wouldn't know the actor that played him in the first part, but he's who's the mad guy? One of Britain's good actors. Let me see if I can. There you go. Stephen Burkhoff plays Stilgar. Who'd have thought? In the Children of Dune, he's there. Bring me worms. He's very, very good. But yeah, I give, and I think both the Children of Dune are floating about on, streaming services, Netflix, Amazon, that kind of thing. So you should be able to check both of them out pretty much for free. But yeah, it is an interesting thing. And as I said, if you think about it as a TV series, 4 hours 36 minutes, and if Danny makes his other film say 2.5, then he's got 5 hours. And the amount of detail, knowledge, etc., political setup that's in that, by the time, it's almost none of it is in Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I don't. My wife had no idea what was going on in the film when we first watched it in the cinema, and I've been watching some people do reactions to watching it and stuff like that, who haven't read the book. And they seem to be, yeah, we get it. It's great fun. It looks really cool. And I don't think they get it at all. It's just, but what do you not get if you're missing the whole thing? I suppose. So it seems to be it's a very sanitized visual look at the shiny, but has no depth to it at all, I think. And certainly when we've been talking, guys, it looks like Paul Atreides is pretty much following the dangerous hero arc and really very little else. And particularly with Frank Herbert wanting to make that theme especially tied to the ecological theme, I think it's really sad that they've gotten rid of it. And I also think it's kind of funny that they're doing this mega let's fly all over the world and burn aviation fuel to promote an environmental film. Excuse me, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You're okay, son, I'm online. That's all right. That's my son saying hello. Seeing what I'm up to. Hello. I don't think he's seen Dune yet. He's more of a into the Spider-Verse kind of thing and Spider-Man and all that stuff. And he likes his Pokemon. So yeah, sorry, I was getting the actresses. So Julie Cox that played Irulan in the TV series, and again, I think she's quite good in the once we get into Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. Yeah. I thought Susan Sarandon was a bit her character, but it's Princess Wenisia, isn't it? Within it, she was a bit odd in it, but I think a bit underused, I suppose. Any classical allusions in Mirror's Galactica which jump out at you? Oh, well, my understanding is that Mirror's Galactica. Oh, okay. Oh God, yeah. Sorry, how all over the place. My understanding is Battlestar Galactica is heavily based on Mormon mythology, but that's the original one. But yes, where do you begin? Apollo, all of the, even, there again, a lot of the gods within the Greek Hellenic world, if you like, Greek gods are pretty much the Roman gods. There's local regional variations and so on, but yeah, all sorts of stuff. And it is a Battlestar Galactica kind of almost represents a creation myth, doesn't it? And by the time you get to the end of Battlestar Galactica, where they're on the Earth, and of course Hera is going to become mitochondrial Eve, isn't she? I think one of the was it one of the 50 Eves? Yeah, it links very nicely into Earth history, Earth prehistory, mythology, etc. So Adam, first man. I suppose there's biblical, but Apollo in particular, Agathon. A lot of the words, and I suppose even the ships within the Battlestar Galactica, Pegasus, is the mount of is the steed of Bellerophon, and then later Perseus. So I just catch up with your comments, guys. Grimdark says Kyle MacLachlan at least got Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks after Dune. He did indeed. Did you ever see what was it? There's a really good film with him in it as well. It was a kind of, is it The Hunted? Is that the one I'm thinking on? Hang on. Bear with me a wee second. It's a science fiction film. No, it's The Hidden. I just remembered it. Didn't have to type. I don't know if you've seen The Hidden with Kyle MacLachlan and who else is in it? Claudia Christian's in it. That's a cracker. This is one of those straight to video, very silly science fiction films that I love. But yeah, Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks. That's kind of my David Lynch period as well. I kind of lost. I loved The Elephant Man, and what I think I haven't seen a David. Last time I seen a David Lynch film was the one with him talking to the monkey, and I loved it. It was a wee short film. But I haven't seen any of his modern stuff. And I think the last film I watched by David Lynch was probably, I'm not sure of the chronology, but what do you call it? Lost Highway, I think. Colleges and Campbells, yes, the Olympians are easy references, but I wonder if this went any deeper than the dressing. Well, I suppose the Olympians, and goodness, it's been a while since I've seen it. I was actually talking about trying to watch it with my wife because I got her into some TV series. The household that my wife grew up and didn't really allow her to watch this kind of stuff as a kid, even things like certain. Yeah, it's Northern Ireland. So we've got her to watch recently. She's got her to watch all the Star Treks. So she's watched Star Trek, the original series. Well, not all of them. Sorry. Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. Didn't go any further than that. And she's watched Farscape, which she didn't really like. And just in terms of box sets that I've got about the house, the one that we haven't watched is Battlestar Galactica. But I was actually just describing it to her the other day. Colleges and Campbells, and said that the main reason, I've seen it 2 or 3 times now, but the main reason I don't go back to it too often is because it gets super bloody heavy at a certain point, and it becomes very, very grim. I have to say, near the end, and it puts me off it a bit. But you kind of need that for that emotional payoff at the very end. But I think the last 3, the double episode and the Let's Go Get Hera Back, that last 3 episodes. Wow, it's worth it for come on, let's go. It's an all or nothing last, and it's great TV, isn't it? I would say there's probably tons of stuff written on this, but just off the top of my head, deeper than dressing, I probably, but it's in the way that myth often sort of refers to, if we take a scene from Hamlet, for example, where he's talking about his father. What's he? Compare him to Hyperion to a satyr? Isn't that what he says about him? And if you've no idea about Greek mythology, what the hell's he mean? If you know a little bit about Greek mythology, my father is like the sun god to this goaty little thing that runs about, and as far as this little beast, then it makes sense if you see what I mean. And it also has an additional layer that if we have any further understanding of those stories through myth. But as we were saying, Colleges and Cannibals, I think that kind of understanding of the myths, the Greek myths in particular, that are fundamentals to Western civilization, are gone in public, in the general understanding, if you like. Battlestar Galactica is grim. Oh, have you got a Helots and Spartans? Okay, it's grim, but I repeat watch because I like to see the Helots get the upper hand over the Spartans. Yeah, I'll put it this way. I mean, it depends on. I think this stuff is used so much by writers these days. If you take Babylon 5, okay, toward the end of season 4, we're not talking about season 5 too much, but Sheridan and the whole thing about the Agamemnon, it's his ship. It's very specifically his ship, and it's his ship that comes in and does. It's the war leader of the Greeks, if you like. Um, Sort of suggesting that Earth is Troy. Either that or it's just a name. But you'll see on the wall in Babylon 5, he's got the Greek helmet and the trident on the back of the Agamemnon. Other ships that were in there, you tend to be Earth generals or mythological beings or science fiction writers. So this, more often, as you say, could be just a bit of dressing. But I think the original kind of Battlestar Galactica does have a myth, and I've read some stuff on this before, and I may actually have some stuff, interestingly enough, in a big that big yellow folder there is full of all sorts of things like that, and I have a whole shebang of yeah, but I would have to look into it further. Um, would you like the Helots getting upper hand over the Spartans? The original Star Trek's like that, I suppose, as well. The Vulcans are, well. Let's see, how do we do this? Romulans are the Romans, Klingons are the Spartans, Vulcans are the Athenians. But again, there's no mythological overlap. It's an attempt to present the characteristics of those societies and philosophies, if you like. And it's all you really need. Spock talks a lot about logic, and you don't really need to understand that he's kind of based on his thinking is kind of Athenian, in that sense, and the various schools about the Klingons are obviously Spartans, and we'll call them Spartans past a certain point, as we pointed out the other day. I think I answered somebody on Twitter saying that so the Atreides are Spartans, and they showed an image from the 300. And I pointed out that, sort of, but the Spartans 700 years before those guys. They're not the same thing. But yeah, something, it is, as much as you're saying it's grim, it really is worth the payoff. And I think Farscape goes that way a lot too. Farscape goes really dark and does possibly the best. How would I say? I think Farscape had the best cliffhangers that we've seen on TV for ages. And not only whenever you went from the end of, say, season 1 into season 2, what a cliffhanger! They kept going frying pan into fire. They kept making it worse. The cliffhanger, I thought they were superb. Very sad what was done to Farscape. It's got its 4 seasons, I suppose, but I'm very happy that it got a film that wrapped it all up. I still think it's one of the best shows. It's the best sci-fi shows it's been on. But I think there is a lot of stuff probably. But as I said, I think that, and again, it depends what you think of Mormon mythology. And yeah, sometimes, well, I don't really worry about this anymore because I live in Northern Ireland. But sometimes religious people will jump on you for talking about myths within a religious sphere, which is quite silly of them, I think. Firefly also got a film with Serenity. Yeah, it's good if you're going to cancel something like that has a lot of time invested in it. It is good to finish off a story. I think it's as I said, I'm one of these people that happily works with fragments, and because I read a lot of ancient literature, it's not all complete. We had a good natter with the wife and a lot of people about how much I love the film The Green Knight. And I've got my copy out there on the shelves. There's fragments missing, all sorts of things missing from some good books. And it doesn't really bother me too much. If you know your Iliad and the Odyssey, they're just part of a bigger epic that's completely lost. Farscape got better when they introduced their Servalan. I'm going to say you're in the United Kingdom, Colleges and Cannibals. At a guess, I might be totally wrong. If anyone doesn't know Servalan, maximum power. Yeah, she was pretty good. Do you mean, what do you call her? I can't remember. What's her name? it's not brag. What's the or do you think of their Servalan as Scorpius? I know what you mean. I got as a very interesting. It's a very sexy show, I thought, and I don't. If you're in the UK, I'm not too sure. Yeah, I don't know about you where you're at, colleges and cannibals, but over in Northern Ireland, the first episode of Farscape came out at 6 o'clock on BBC Two, Northern Ireland, and they had to very quickly move it to a late night slot. It's just one of the first episodes is they're all body swapped, and it ends up with Crichton's got his hands down in Aaron's pants and stuff like that. It was, I think everybody thought, here's the latest kids show from the Muppets, and my God, they were wrong. Yeah, Farscape got better. Colleges and Cannibals says when they introduced their Servalan. So Servalan is the villain, arguably, from Blake 7, which is a great show. Haven't seen Blake 7 in years. Scorpio's boss. Melon Grazer, that's it. Aye. Yeah, very good. She's the wee breasts with the pheromone, just that's it, men do what she wants. It secretes a gland or something, isn't it? It was excellent. Never seen better. I'm nothing but praise for Farscape. I have a setup an A to Z of science fiction. The idea this is stuff I'm going to do over the next year to give me stuff to make content. It's a cracking show, and I've said I'm going to have a good look at Farscape. I can't wait, actually. My wife's watched it. She thinks it's a cracking show. I've got some really nice special edition DVDs here with tons of stuff on them as well, and I got them at a real cheap price somehow. I don't know why. The pilot's great, and arguably Farscape's Buck Rogers. A reinvention of Buck Rogers, and it works against the American paradigm of science fiction. Or not, I suppose that it's an attempt at a paradigm shift out of that. The dominant American tropes that have developed and out of golden age science fiction ended up on the TV. So if you understand what I mean, it's American science fiction is often let's put a bunch of people together and they'll all work together, compensating and doing whatever it is they have to do to achieve their goal. It's very much the Star Trek, let's all be fun and work together. Farscape is the opposite. It's a bunch of criminals who great characters, but very seldom do they work together. And I think that's what Farscape's got going for it. You never quite know what's going to happen because generally one of them's going to screw over the other. And there are lots of their interests conflict, I think. And as the characters are fantastic. The puppetry is phenomenal. And some of the monsters on it are phenomenal. It was a beautiful show. Really beautiful. I thought top acting by everybody around. Top writing. It just ticked every single box, I think. I said a slightly more adult, very intelligent show. I thought, yeah, that's it. I mean, because they've got, it's not Jim Henson, isn't it? It's Brian Henson, isn't it? The son of the Muppet Company, I suppose. But yeah, some of the aliens look wow, and some of the ideas in it. Yeah, it's whenever Farscape was running, I suppose it was at the late 90s, early 90s, kind of got a sense of the peace process in Northern Ireland. So I returned here. And I actually went to a bar in Belfast to watch Farscape, the first episode of the third series. In fact, I think it was a double bill or whatever it was. I couldn't see it, and this bar had it, and some people who were well into it had organised that. Yeah, let's all go to this pub and watch Farscape. And I've never done that before in my life, and I'm sure it's probably a thing that people do in the States or England, etc., or maybe the UK. But it was a totally new experience for me, and I loved the fact that I could do that. Again, great cliffhangers and stuff. But the ships are brilliant. The design. The swearing, it's got a language. It's a very clever show. From my point of view, guys, I think it's one of the best sci-fi shows ever made. I can't do anything really but gush about it, to be honest. I'm not a gusher, in that sense, And yeah, as much as we're on sci-fi and stuff, part of me is thinking about wanting to open up our topics a wee bit. We've been heavily on to Dune, just trying to cover it with a bit of work that we've been doing. And I did this pelipid line kind of thing just really because I was asked to. Um, and I thought, yeah, sure, why not? So I'm trying to think what coming. I know what's coming next is actually I'm going to probably do a wee bit of work on. I've decided to read "Stars My Destination," Tiger again. Pardon me. Which pardon me. I'm enjoying thoroughly. It's been a while since I've read it, and it's known by a couple of things actually, but some people call so it's the Stars My Destination, also known as Tiger. Some people call it the Iliad of science fiction, not because of its scope or anything, but because its main theme is revenge, the wrath of Gully Foyle, if you like. I just watched. I just caught up with the episode of. I watched the first episode of the new series of The Expanse last night, and decided to watch the previous episode from the old series, and was just occurred to me that what I was watching, and I'm very bad with the characters' names from The Expanse. By the way, I have a memory problem for names of which is almost at the level of disability. Let me see. To be honest, which is which I hate because I have a really good memory for just about everything else. So I'll tell you that I have to look up the characters' names. Oh, I'm so bad at this. Season 4, season 5. Oh, for God's sake, give us a character name. There we go. Naomi Nagata. So the actress is Dominique Tipper. Is it Naomi's character was swapping over the oxygen bottles? This thing that she has to try to do with the stay alive with the oxygen. And I was just going, wow, that's right. That's almost identical to the start of Tiger. So I'm really enjoying reading that. And I'm going to do a video on it hopefully soon. And I'm going to have a wee look at colleges and cannibals. I keep calling you colleges and cannibals. It's colleges and cannibals. Sorry, trying to speak too quick. I'm going to do a video on Sapphire and Steel, if you know it, because I love Sapphire and Steel. But for anybody who hasn't seen Blake Seven, if I know we have viewers from all around the world. It's a British dystopian science fiction series from I think the late 70s, early 80s, and is also known as the show in the UK. It's known as the show that ruined Christmas. And I remember this very, very well because basically they put the last episode on at Christmas, and Blake Seven, Magnificent Seven, Seven Samurai, whatever you want. It has the conclusion to Blake Seven. So I'll give a spoiler alert if anybody wants to hit the mute button, hit it now. The conclusion to why it's called the show that spoiled Christmas is all the heroes get killed, all the good guys die at the very. And it was like, and I was a little kid, just went, oh, a little kid, as a little kid, you love it, but to see all your heroes get slaughtered, and Avon's the last one, and you don't know is he going to survive. It just goes to black, and you hear all the guns going off, and that's the end of Blake Seven. I remember everybody in our house just going, oh, and Blake's even back and stuff, and had been, as I remember correctly, I think I'm not sure if he'd escaped or Blake was meant to be dead for a while. I think the actor had left, and they ended up bringing him back. But it's just a big slaughter fest at Christmas, and it's very much a sort of dystopian kind of sci-fi view of Thatcher's Britain, I think sometimes. But yeah, it's a great show, Blake Seven, and Servalan, one of science fiction's greatest villains. What a great villain! I think a great archetype for female villains. I think we hadn't seen a villain like her, and certainly on British TV. Very clever, very very into her power, and very glamorous as well. So there you go. Yeah, Blake Seven, and yeah, sci-fi TV. I think it's a bit what on earth is going on at the minute. I don't know. The new Star Trek Discovery has gone from being seemingly to have being very adult show with what I would call highly sexualized themes and almost to the point of sadomasochism, to space Jesus as I think the critical drinker would point out. It's a very bizarre show, and I always took Star Trek franchise as a family show. That was something that certainly when I was a kid, you could sit around, you could watch it with your, my dad could watch it with your kids, you could watch it with your granny, that kind of thing. It wouldn't offend anybody too much. But yeah, there we go. So Farscape's definitely on my top of things. List of things. I'd like to look into Battlestar Galactica. I understand it's getting a reboot, the Battlestar Galactica. I can't for the life of me figure out why. What why bother? It hasn't aged in any particular way since that time, and it's not like I can understand why Babylon 5 is getting a reboot. Totally makes sense. Why J. Michael Straczynski's on that, and it's really because it got messed up at the end. How they developed that, the special effects technology over the years. If you look at year one of Babylon 5, even the motion of the ships, etc., the rendering's not great. And by the end of year 4, it's phenomenal, really good. And of course, they managed to, whatever way it happened, I think they got sort of cancelled, not cancelled, this kind of thing, and ended up that they kind of completed their story. Let's finish it all in year 4, apart from that one sort of last episode, and then they just didn't really have much to talk about in year 5. And year 5 of Babylon 5 is massively disappointing. And he should, to be honest with you, if I'd been J. Michael Straczynski, I don't know if it would have been an option. I would have shut my show down there. At the end of the 4th year of Babylon 5, that was the time to end it. But I do get that he had to rap so much. And I think it was a great thing, Babylon 5 at the time. I know a lot of people don't like it very much. And you'll have a very heavy overlay of mythology there. Colleges and canals all over the place, So there we go. Has anybody got any wee questions or comments for me? I've been gabbing away here for a while. I'm going to drink some of the precious fluids. And if anybody wants to send us a wee tipper tapper. But I'm really pleased this is going much better tonight. No power cuts or any critical technological failures or anything like that. But we understand quite a lot of people have been without power, and I think it's here, not just here in the UK, but for about 8 or 9 days now. So we haven't had it too bad, I suppose. But there you go. But critical drinker can be funny a lot of the time, but he misses the point on politics and media. Since I started doing these videos about a year and a half ago, really. I think I started running the station probably June 2020, as I recall. I've been a person who's avoided social media, all sorts of things like that for a while. Even though a computers lecture, and it's one of the I quite like his take on some of the films, I have to say. This is the point in politics. I don't know. It's part of a little cluster of people, isn't it? Some of their opinions I'm not too keen on, but it's politics, and this is the point on politics and the media. I don't know. There's a thing that there's a good line in Babylon 5, isn't it? It's television is a cultural wasteland full of inappropriate metaphors and an unrealistic portrayal of reality, I think is the quote. And I don't, politics in the media. Politics is about our happiness, the science of the happiness of humanity, if you like. I honestly don't get the media at the minute, and I really don't get the Hollywood press machine. And we've seen things like this that I believe the Cowboy Bebop show has been shut down, and I think I mentioned this a wee bit earlier, folks. I was talking about modern writers, for example. Grimdark, I don't know if you caught this earlier. I was talking in particular about Alistair Reynolds is the person who said this. Alistair Reynolds was a guest on Media Death Cult. Is that it? Which is not a bad wee Moid Moidenhoff, I think, is the chap that runs that show. I'm not a fan because Moid carries a gun, and I'm not. I was subscribed to him. If you know me, you'll know how much I hate guns and how much I hate people who carry guns. So and it's a prop for him, and I think he probably has. He's a good way of presenting himself and still, and I think he probably has some younger viewers. But In fact, I know he does, but I don't like seeing guns like that at all. Which is why I unsubscribed to him, which is a bit of a shame because I like his content. But he had Alistair Reynolds on talking about how, based upon what's going on in the media, etc., out there, that he's decided he won't ever read a book by anyone who's committed suicide again, which is just the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. And I used to I've met Alistair Reynolds once in Belfast. I met him with Ian Banks and their respective partners, and I actually attended a wee thing and had a chat to him, and he seemed pretty reasonable. And there's an example of somebody who's scared and altering their possible literary behavior because of a point about politics in the media. That and as I said, I think the other one that I'm reading, Tiger Stars My Destination at the minute, and it has an introduction by Neil Gaiman, and it talks about how if Alfred Bester was alive today, he would write this rape scene differently. And I was absolutely appalled by it. I'm just going, how would you know? And Alfred Bester writes like Alfred Bester, and as I would say, not every writer has to go into gratuitous detail every time you want to depict a rape or a murder or something in books. At the same time, within the popular media, the Romans have a thing called memento damnatio. If you know what memento mori is, it's memento mori is a thing that if you're a Roman general getting a triumph, this guy walks alongside you and goes memento mori, and it means remember you too will die. It's about not getting a big hit. But the Romans had this thing called memento damnatio, which is the removal of wipe out somebody's memory from society, so that the future world will never know who they were. And it's done a few times, more than once actually. The fact that we actually do know what it's done is quite interesting. Yeah, and so he was. Yeah, it's just interesting that these men. And as you say, just reading your comment there, Grimdark, I'll just read it out loud. I'm not one to think all art is political, but most science fiction has always explored sensitive political issues. Absolutely. You could argue all art is useless, which I disagree. Is that Oscar Wilde again? You're absolutely right. Science fiction is a subversive genre, regardless of what it's been called over the years. Highly subversive. Politics, again, I have a slightly different school. Politics to me is not government, etc. Politics would be the science of the happiness of humanity. But absolutely sensitive. Yeah, science fiction is able to do it in a way that other people can't. If you think about things that might get you put up against the wall and shot, comedians often think that, I can get away with anything. I'm a comedian. No, you can't. They can't. There is a line, and even certain things. Science fiction has a big shield around it, in a sense that whatever your philosophical bent is, or whatever idea that you wish to approach, it's not considered real. And it's what makes science fiction so powerful, in terms of being able to alter, the societal consciousness, if you like, and it has done many, many times. But it's you see, I'll not be a person. You've probably got this from me. You want to talk about issues of race or skin color, sex, gender. I don't care what you want to talk about. Let's talk. There's no subject off the table, and I'm not going to censor anyone unless they're. In fact, I wouldn't censor somebody. If you want to slur against somebody, go ahead and do it. It's better to let people see that. I think if you want to act like a monster, let people see you act like a monster. Rather than shut that person up and have them hide being a monster. We've had to deal with some sort of nonsense here on the station, actually. And I've yet to kind of respond to the individual in question, and I'm considering having them arrested, but YouTube's done nothing about it, to be honest with you. But I'm trying to figure it out. But my actual response on the channel to sort of white supremacist bullshit was to publish a story by feminist Muslim writer from Bangladesh. So there you go. Short connect Gaiman is a dickhead. He's a bit of a yeah. I've read Neil Gaiman since I was at school, and particularly The Sandman. I'm not a fan of all of his books, and I did enjoy. In fact, I haven't read a lot of them. I've read a few of them. I did enjoy Anansi Boys. Is that it? And what was the one before it? Yeah, but big fan of The Sandman, I would say. But yeah, separate the art from the individual, I suppose. Isn't there a reason why Asimov used robots as allegory to a press script since Campbell editorial demands not allowing aliens? Ah, that's an interesting question, Grimdark. Oh, I would have to look into Asimov a bit more. I'm not too sure. I understand what you're saying. The bulk of the robot stories are legal dramas, aren't they? I'm very very fond on them, but I haven't read them in a while. We've got the complete robot somewhere. Ah, there you go. Much as I'm bringing up a few bits and pieces, that's a great collection of stories. Oh, nice to see nice big print. It's a very good question. We've got stories like Galley Slave, Little Lost Robot, non-human robots, and ultimately where he goes with it, I'm not too sure is the reason. Grimdark, I don't know. I might have a wee look at that book. Actually, see that I didn't know too much about Asimov biographically, to be honest with you. And I haven't read much by him in a long time. In fact, the last time I read Asimov, probably the late 90s, I think. Pardon me. Ladies behave. I'm not too sure as the reason. What I do know is this: in terms of the laws of robotics, Asimov said that Campbell came up with them. Campbell said Asimov came up with them. Excuse me, 1 second. Right, ladies, go on. Off you go. Oh, bye bye. Toss them a toy or two there. Sorry about that. They're having a natter at the door there. So that's a publicity thing, by the way. Asimov, I'm pretty sure, did come up with them. But if you ever asked Asimov who came up with the laws of robotics, he said it was Campbell. And then journalists would go and ask Campbell who did it, and he would say it was Asimov. And it was a thing about of getting it going. I know that I think eventually Asimov fell out with him probably as well. I do know John W. Campbell, despite getting Asimov and Heinlein their start editing their works, Campbell was also a notorious proponent of race, science, and segregationism. There's all sorts of people have problems with Campbell. Grimdark. I do know a bit about him. Actually, I probably know more about him than Asimov. Yeah, at the end of the day, we talk a wee bit. I think I have an episode somewhere where we're looking at Frank Herbert as part of the Big Four, and it has a wee bit of a chat about it. And it talks about the influence of John W. Campbell. And I have a wee episode on the golden age of science fiction, which he's fundamental to. I understand he alienated just about every single writer he brought in, including, and my understanding was especially people like Heinlein. And Heinlein, they've been friendly. I do know, despite getting Asimov and Heinlein their start, editing the work, Campbell was also a notorious proponent of race. Yeah, he's a funny guy, isn't he? And I don't mean funny, haha. And he's not a bad. There's a couple of things. The Thing, isn't it? Is pretty much who goes there, isn't it? Is Campbell's story. It's not all bad, but I think changing views and stuff over time. Campbell ends up heavily involved with. And Herbert, I suppose a lot of these guys are in this stuff at the time. Things like general semantics and stuff like that are floating around. These kind of what I call now you might not like this, but I'll go for it anyway. Things like general semantics are just bullshit, quite frankly. And it's simply put, from my point of view, it's a remasking, it's a reformation of rhetoric. And as a rhetorician, I'll tell you that rhetoric is the art of persuasion, which is not true. It's the art of manipulation. And to say that rhetoric is the art of persuasion is a rhetoric in itself, I would argue. So Campbell ended up, I suppose, and I have a couple of these books. They're not the sort of things that I would actually personally buy, but I've got, because of my work into science fiction literature and stuff like that, I picked up books like this, like Dianetics. So there is a kind of progression from, and Herbert's kind of involved with the general semantic stuff, and some ideas come out of that. It really is just kind of how to manipulate people through words, old skills. Then there's an association with A. Van Vogt and with L. Ron Hubbard, which results in Dianetics, I suppose. And you'll see in some of my videos that we've used those covers and how much John W. Campbell Jr. went on to try and push Dianetics through the magazine publications, and ultimately this leads to, and I think A. Van Vogt was heavily involved in this, and I think even he'd had enough at a certain point. So you can see the direction of where that was going towards something like the Church of Scientology. I would call it sort of snake oil salesman stuff. I use the term for basically anything that's bullshit that someone wants to try and sell you. I think it was a Sloan's liniment as a famous one. Long before you could get Cadbury's chocolate, it used to be called Sloan's chocolate. I don't know if you know that. It's really interesting. But see, Heinlein gets a bad time of it, doesn't he? Somebody was pointing this out to me, that Heinlein's considered a bit funny in America these days, a bit fascist. Was that it? I think that's correct. And just because you write a book about fascism doesn't make you one. I can write a book about Greek mythology. It doesn't make me a Greek, or it doesn't make me a myth. If you see what I mean. But Asimov, I honestly don't know. The robot dramas are heavily legal orientated. They are about kind of looking, I suppose, that analog. You put it, are they an allegory for oppressed groups? Probably. The fact that, if we use that term, then yeah, I'd say so. I was trying to think of particular instances of it, but I also think it's an attempt to explore how a brand new technology would be integrated into human society, especially a technology that's designed to ultimately replace human labor. And I think the book where that kind of comes to culmination, and I may be wrong, sorry, is The Bicentennial Man, where we get the fourth law of robotics, don't we? About the self-preservation of the robot. It's a good book, by the way. I really like the Bicentennial Man. I thought the movie was ridiculously sentimental. Was it Robin Williams playing Andrew, wasn't it? If I recall rightly, that's his name. So, yeah, I have some books on this, Grimdark, and I'll have a wee look into it for you if I can remember. I'm trying to think. There's a particularly good book. Now, bear with me a wee second. I don't know if it's here. It's, in fact, let me see. That's science fiction, contemporary mythology. It's not the thing I'm after. Here we go. There we are. Right. Yeah, and look who's on the cover. There we go. This is Understanding. I haven't got this book out before, I don't think. Understanding Contemporary American Science Fiction goes from what it calls the formative period of 1926 to 1970. So that's the magazine era to the new wave in my lingo. It's not a bad wee book. I suppose, yeah, I'll check. I'll have a look into it and see if I can find out. I've got Edward James's Science Fiction in the 20th Century is also quite a good read. I've actually got tons of books like this over here. Always keep them all up the stairs. But yeah, I'm honestly not 100% sure. But as I said, there's a bit of a revolt against, and I think a lot of how, I'll be quite honest with you, I think a lot of what Campbell does in America um, is responsible for creating this new wave. We've got authors who are deliberately writing books as a backlash against him, or to take the piss out of his ideas. And so we have Herbert's Dune, and of course, Campbell would not publish Dune Messiah um, because it wasn't what Campbell wanted. If you all of this is in my work, guys, you get all the quotes and stuff, but just to paraphrase, it just wasn't what he wanted. And how dare you? And he was very interested in the, I suppose, grimdark is the Ubermensch kind of idea. He's very into that, I think, and particularly with Van Vogt, Van Vogt, Alfred Eaton Van Vogt, um, who writes we talk about the Slan books, the Null A books, etc. Stories of Johnny Cross. That is what Campbell likes, if you see what I mean. And Dune is kind of an attack against this stuff. In fact, I've often said that Dune's polemic against science fiction. It is a full-on attack against these kind of messianic tropes that are coming out of science fiction, and how it looks at the hero. An analysis of the hero. One of those aspects of Dune is how it looks at the science fiction hero. Excuse me. How it looks at the the mythological hero, but also how it looks at the current political heroes as well. And it's kind of the reason why the next book that I'm going to hit and do a wee video on, and it's a nice short book, is Tiger. And this is another book that's a kind of up yours to John W. Campbell. In fact, Bester has two of them, I think. And Demolished Man and Tiger, I understand, are also responses to this Uber von group and this universal Superman kind of thing that we have coming out of these stories. And in fact, Bastard gives us Gully Foyle, the ultimate lowest of low, the piece of shit man who's nothing. And watch it, and it's Gully Foyle is a response to that. And he also gives us Ben Reich from The Demolished Man, who's a very rich part. That is more that kind of thing. Both of those characters, I think, are responses to Campbell at the time. And I'm very, very fond of Alfred Bester. Haven't read him in a while, but a good while back, I basically absorbed all his short stories, and I'm hoping it's all of them anyway. I must check, but I picked up some nice editions that came into the country, and I don't know, because he was always quite hard to get over here. And I got things like Extra and the Computer Connection about there. So he's a great writer, and I love the way Bester plays with words on the page. So and ultimately, this is the start of the new wave. It's a revolt. I'll tell you something I find really interesting about Frank Herbert, and this is, I suppose, from the Herbert orthodox Herbertarian point of view. Herbert wanted science fiction out of the gutter, and he wanted to write a piece of literature. The kind of book that he's writing against, that's the archetype for that type of literature, is exactly what Campbell and A. Van Vogt are up to. And this is the archetype of that book. It's slam. So this is the Van Vogtian hero, as we call it. Might as well call it the Campbellian hero, as far as I'm concerned. But simply put, this is the book that one of the things that Dune's meant to be a response to. Now, quite interestingly enough, in terms of what's been done to Dune by the Dune series by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, that we've had this, let's just keep going and write and give them, just churn it out, mass-produced pulp fiction that I think has degraded the quality and created so many paradoxes within the story. What I find particularly interesting is that Kevin J. Anderson also writes in this universe too. And I think that's a really interesting thing. And I don't know what you think about it. So he's pulping out these Dune books with that. I mean, he's obviously I think he's just a dictation machine. If you're recording everything you write or say into a microphone, hand it to a typist. It's an easy way of writing a book in 30 days. But I think it gives you a bit of insight into how much work Frank Herbert put into his, because Dune is a 5 to 6 year research, right? I think, KJA. Yeah, so I think it's a hell of a coincidence after all of this time that Kevin J. Anderson operates in writing in two different universes, one of which is a response to the other, and he's turned them into mass produced. I'm not too sure how much in terms of slam, but I do know he's got at least one or two books on slam, I think. Let me have a wee quick look. Wikipedia. There we go. Sorry, just the one probably. American science fiction author Kevin J. Anderson completed the sequel to Slan titled Slan Hunter that includes content from an unfinished draft by Van Vogt, published in July 2010. July 10, 2007, credited to both Van Vogt and Kevin J. Anderson. Van Vogt's widow, Lydia Van Vogt, previously gave permission to publish her introduction online, which partly deals with the onset of Alzheimer's disease that Van Vogt struggled with at the end of his life. Citation needed, so that might be complete nonsense. There we go. So no, it's just the one book, actually. There you go. Oh, colleges and camels. Good night, sir. All the best. Enjoyed the conversation. So did I. Thank you very much for joining us. And we'll wrap up in a wee minute, folks. I've been going for a good 2 hours and 20 minutes. My bladder will fail shortly. So I'll just say, just read the last few comments, and if you've got any last few things, we'll say goodnight. But Grimdark says KJA has consistently wrote for licensed properties most of his career and little original works. Yeah, good night, Dan. He says, yeah, it's. I don't read many books like that, to be honest with you. I know Star Wars. There's so many Star Wars novels. There's Star Trek novels. There's and I sort of look at these new Dune books, etc. And I did have to look into them when I was doing my PhD, the first two. And to be completely honest with you, I read the next three, the House of Atreides, and I was done. And I always said it's the authorial voice that's so different. But this is not Frank Herbert speaking. It's not his writing. It doesn't sound anything like him. And I think almost, when you do write in other properties, licensed properties, and it depends if you're trying to imitate an author or not. If you are trying to imitate another author, it's very difficult. You need to have a damn good eye for language and a good understanding of that author. There are people who do it, and they're really good at it. But it's not a thing that anybody can step in and go, can you go in here and write me a new Dune book and make it sound like Frank Herbert? Hell no. Probably a handful of people on the planet that could do it. And I don't think Brian and KJA succeeded at all. Some of it almost sounds like it was written by Bill and Ted sometimes, I have to say. It is a strange thing, I suppose. I don't know. We've been talking about the regurgitation of material and how so little new ideas are around, and it's a really bad sign for society. I've actually said that I did an A to Z of what's coming up on the science fiction station because I refuse to do top tens. And if you know anything, I've commented on this, that whenever you start categorizing everything that's wonderful about your society, if you understand the civilizations, it's usually a sure thing that your civilization's about to fall. It's in stagnation. And certainly the United Kingdom has been heavily stagnating for at least, probably since the end of the war. But I'd go back a bit further than that. And it's a cultural malaise, if you think about it. And it is interesting, but we had a similar one. And the sad thing is it usually ends in a war. But if you look at what we call the fin de siècle, the end of the cycle, this golden age of literature that starts around the 1850s maybe, and it ends not quite on the dot, but pretty much so with the beginning of World War One, and it's a hell of a body of literature. And a lot of us would think of a lot of it's science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and adventure stories. A lot of us would think it's incredibly dated stuff, but it was so imaginative, at the time. And it's a bit like this at the minute, and then it led to just and then you started getting people doing. I can't think of a new idea. I'm going to write a sequel to this guy's work. You'll get it. Garrett P. Is it Garrett P. Service's sequel to War of the Worlds? Is it something like that? It starts to happen, and you get a dilution of original ideas. It's really bad. You could argue for the Greeks, it starts with Herodotus putting, let's come up with 7 wonders of the world. Isn't our society so wonderful that you're busy going around identifying what's great about your society rather than fixing what's wrong with it, if you see what I mean. Grimdark says, Brian did promise to publish a concordance based on his father's notes years ago, but he still hasn't done it, or the notes don't exist, laughing out loud. My understanding, I think I've commented about this, that there is a piece of work out there. Grimdark, bear with me a wee second, see if I can find it for you. Because I found it not too long ago. No. Oh, goodness. Right, let me see. I must have a... I'll tell you what, hang on. Try that. Bear with me. If I can't find it, don't worry. I'll go look for it another time. I must bookmark it. Keep saying that. I thought maybe I did. Hang on. Oh, that's too many bookmarks. Got to sort out my bookmarks, folks. It's basically in this academic work. Now we're talking about the book launch. By the way, folks, if anybody's joining us late tonight, there'll be a book launch on the 20th of this month with Cara Kennedy. Dr. Cara Kennedy's got a new book coming out on women's agency in the Dune universe, which should be a must for any Dune fan, I think. She hasn't got so arguably we're the two people that have done, we're the Dune doctors, if you want to think of it that way. We're the two people who've done PhDs on Dune, and neither of us have gotten near the notes. In fact, I've been any attempt that I've had over the years to contact Brian Herbert has been blanked. In fact, interestingly enough, in terms of contacting anybody to do with my work on Dune, I have been blanked by absolutely everyone except for Dr. Cara Kennedy. And I just figured that maybe just people don't respond to emails and stuff anymore. But it was bizarre. So apparently this new piece of work has got the notes in them. But my understanding is that if the notes exist, it's urban myth as far as I'm concerned that they're 30 pages. But you're talking to one of two people on this earth that should have seen them. So there we go. I ain't seen shit, and I've never spoken to Brian Herbert despite reaching out to him. And I've actually asked him. I sent him a message asking, here's my PhD. I wonder what you think of it. And basically added that I hope you find it something that's respectful to your father's work. That was always very important to me. Maybe ask him. I don't know. I think just famous people don't speak to, people like myself. I'm on Twitter, but I haven't been on Twitter very long. And Twitter, I understand, is quite a bizarre place. So I try not to really comment on anything at all, or unless it's got something to do with my expertise. It's just to let somebody know. But I don't really want to. I don't try to invest in social media too much or use it too much, which is probably why our station's not that popular. But well, it's as much as since Road to Dune has some alternative chapters that Frank wrote. Yeah, there is other material. Got a couple of copies of that about here somewhere. And there's the maker of there's actually, you'll find some other stuff about there as well. I must actually do one night, guys. I must just dig out everything here that we've got on Dune, stack it up there, and take you through an awful lot of books and magazines and stuff like that. I've got some really good old magazine articles and so on and so forth. So I'll maybe try and organize them for a live one of these live streams, and we can sit and chat about pretty much where you can find all the Dune stuff. Up here's my kind of, I don't know if you can see my bookshelf. I've been bringing up books every time I talk about a book. And I have books in different. I can't fit all my books in this house, sadly, but they're all behind here. All right, there we up there. There we go. All the Dune ones. We have a few more, and then we've got some textbooks. Frank Herbert Dune. Let's get Frank Herbert's Eye. That's Maker of Dune by Frank Herbert. That's the Donald E. Oh no, that's not the Donald E. Columbo one. That's the William Tupolt's book on Frank Herbert, which is really good. There's all sorts. We have a bunch of his lot, and we have a whole pile more Dune stuff downstairs, actually, our Frank Herbert stuff. We've got a bunch of magazines and things, and I've got first edition, actually, of the first three magazines of Dune World, which I might actually be getting rid of at some point. And bear with me. On me second, what else have we got? What's that? Just a few things. Because I basically have somebody put together a really cracking biography of Frank Herbert for academic use, which helped me. So I have things like, this is Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction. There we go, big interviews and stuff like this. I love old magazines like this, by the way. Sometimes it's not that they're interviewing an author. You might get a wee illustration of the author. And your proper, there you go. There's your Planet of the Apes and all that stuff. Real thing. When is this? Doesn't have a year on it by the looks of it. Just says May. Hang on. Volume 1, number 3. Volume 1, number 3. What's this? Repent Harlequin said the TikTok man's in this. Some said the alien space. What could they do about Jerry Carl and George adapt a mini puzzle by Frank Herbert? I wonder what that's about. I don't know. I must look into that. It seems that must have gone over my head. Sorry, folks. I've got some quite interesting stuff. I must dig it out and kind of regurgitate it to you. Exclusive their Future magazine with Frank Herbert on the filming of Dune. This one's quite good. Vertex has got some good interviews with Frank. Lovely piece of art there on the back of that. Look at that. Who's that by? Cover art by Tim Kirk. I think this is one that I took some scans from this. Yep, a writer needs time, uninterrupted time with the tools of his trade. I think you get a kinesthetic link right through the body. The thought comes into your head and goes right through your hands onto the paper. Really good wee interviews. These are multi-page with photos and etc. And you'll see I've scanned some of these photos before. So I have a whole bunch of stuff with Frank. Some of it pretty obscure, but whenever I was doing my PhD, trying to survive economically doing a PhD is nuts. Because in this country, basically, they dribble out money to you every 3 months, and whether you've got your rent, bills, books, whatever to pay. So I used to pretty much buy everything that I needed in terms of books, But that's worth having a go. Well, listen, guys, Ryan the Scar saying good night, Doc, and chat, of course. Listen, thank you very much, everybody. I will say good night because I've been out for 2.5 hours, and tonight was we kind of do sci-fi, science fiction Fridays. Kind of if it doesn't work or collapses, it becomes a sci-fi Saturday. So it's been nice chat. It always works better when we've got people to talk to. And I honestly don't know if Grimdark, you were saying about Kevin J. Anderson. I don't know. I didn't know him, and I just sent it to Brian because I didn't think Brian Herbert was Frank Herbert's son. I thought that was the kind of thing. But just as I'll point out, just I'll leave you with this, guy. Science fiction academia is not a good idea if you're looking to continue an academic career. It's arguably what I would call career suicide. Unfortunately, I didn't do my PhD for those reasons. But certainly in trying to push my PhD, might as well have been, But there we go. But you never know. I don't know. I suppose, look, at the end of the day, Grimdark, what I've done is turned the whole PhD into a set of videos. So if he ever wants to give us an opinion on it, I'm sure he can give us a comment. But I'm sure he knows they exist. But Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I think it must. I don't think it must be a very nice to be Brian Herbert in some ways with the amount of grief that he gets over the Dune universe. But look, it's just one of those things, I suppose, you know. But it's interesting. We're always talking about the distillation of this, the dilution, if you like, of certain properties and the inability of new writers to come up with new ideas and something fresh, you know. Hmm. Well, listen, folks, thank you very much for joining me. I'd actually quite happily go on, but I'm a wee bit tired tonight. I haven't been too well. And so we'll call it a night. And I hope you can all join me next week. And if I can get Tiger Red, hopefully might make a new video in time. And if not, we'll see us for another live chat on Friday. And as I said, we'll be having that book event launch. We're going to do a book launch with Dr. Cara Kennedy on the 20th. And I've posted some details of that on the community section of the YouTube channel. So I hope you might be able to. That's going to be a live chat and discussion thing with two Dune doctors, two Dune doctors. So that might be of interest to some of you. Listen, thank you very much, Grimder. All you guys have a good night. Look after yourselves wherever you are. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Good night. Bye bye. Do. Hello, the girls. Hello, Noodles.